Generally, you said feminism is neutral.
Here's what actually happened.
The foundation of all knowledge.
Money. I'm really mad that
What difference does it make, right? What
Stop.
difference?
Stop.
the deregulation of the industry is obviously going to cause more of that industry.
To lubricate the trust connection between people until they have enough.
Yet we could still look at biological reality in determining who's a female, even if there are.
Why don't you denounce feminism the same way you're denouncing capitalism? If you don't...
For something to be objective, it needs to be verifiable. And you can't verify...
If I make a claim as a political pundit, it is true that I definitely could be wrong.
Yeah,
you're promoting, right?
Ideology is the main thing in politics, right? This is my ideology.
And so, 2015, anyone go back and watch the footage? The first GOP debate.
Cool, Robert. Oh, that? With a crowbar, you say?
And good evening. You even got the cue and you're good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I am Sarah the Raging Tomato here, bringing to you another amazing debate between Paranoid American, who's back for more, and MC Toon making his way back to the screen. It's been a while. We're very excited to have you both here. This evening, they will be debating we should replace teachers with AI. Paranoid American, you have the affirmative claim. If you'd like to make your opening statement, please.
Wow, we're just going to go right into it. All right, let's do this. All right, well, let me just get one thing just completely clear, that this is not whether we 5-year-olds need adults. Of course they do. This is more about if the adult in that room needs to be a primary lecturer, a curriculum designer, a grader, a tutor, a behavior manager, a counselor, a babysitter, all of these things at the exact same time, right? We already have job roles called paraprofessionals. We have assistant teachers. They're the ones that tend to handle supervision and like the human support element. AI can take over completely the academic instruction layer, the teaching part, while adults can sort of be cordoned off and just handle that human layer. So here's kind of what that would look like, is that each individual student could have a personalized AI tutor that, don't be worried, they can be trained on the same Rockefeller approved curriculum, the same textbooks, the same state standards, lesson plans. The extra improvement is that they also can have a student's history. This means that teachers don't have to be the ones that are essentially a bottleneck for content delivery in a classroom. So AI, it becomes a default instructional layer, while the trained adults that are in the room, they can be in charge of supervising, mentoring, sort of enforcing all the social standards. So right now, 2026, and as long as I've been alive, the entire school model is pretty much overloaded as is, right? So as I mentioned, we expect a single adult in many cases to be, I'm not even going to go through the entire list, but a subject matter expert, a curriculum designer, the person that does the lectures, an individual tutor, a disciplinarian, a counselor, a mentor, an administrator, a classroom manager for 20 to 35 kids at once. And that's usually, if you're lucky, you've only got 20 kids in your class. They sometimes can get combined and get bigger than this. And in a lot of those cases, beyond just the teaching capacity, Teachers are going to be on the hook to pay for supplies. If you want to have a holiday decoration, all of those supplemental materials, snacks, tissues, just overall a ridiculous amount of personal investment, which is far beyond what's expected of almost any other career field, specifically within the government sector. Imagine any other government job where like the DMV person's in charge of bringing snacks and tissues and like all the, so it's a really weird sort of portion of this, the career field that you've got to pick from. AI is the first thing so far in history that allows us to kind of split those different roles apart. So in this sort of theory that I'm putting forward, and I really do believe that we're headed here anyways, so it's almost a moot point. So maybe I'm just making you feel better about what's already going to happen. Let AI deliver personalized instruction. If you're a visual learner or an audio learner or a kinetic learner, great, you can get more visuals. If you want to pace around the room, you can do that too. If you want the teacher to talk in simpler words, more advanced words, use more or less analogies. If you want to stop in the middle of a lesson and say, hey, what did that word just mean? Even if we're not in an English class, right? That was one thing that always bugged me. If you're in like science class, you can't necessarily be like, hey, wait, what does this word mean? Because then that stops the lesson for everybody else. Maybe you learn better with interactive examples. Maybe you need to be gamified. The exact same content and lesson plans can basically be presented in an infinite number of personalized ways per student. Everyone learns differently. Everyone learns at a different pace. And there's just honestly no possible way that you can scale the human resource of a teacher to cater to every single one of those students. So basically, you let humans handle the human behavior, the safety, the social norms, encouragement, mentoring, dealing with attendance, just overall teaching kids how to participate in the micro as a community, and then at the macro, maybe like at society at large. That can be the role of a human being or an adult in that classroom, but not as the academic teacher. So I guess if I want to simplify my entire position here, AI should become the primary instructional layer in schools, and the adults remain responsible for the human layer. It's a complete division of the different requirements and responsibilities. And I've got 4 main points, way more than that, a whole bunch of different examples. I'm going to try to boil it into 4 points in my opening here. The first one is that the current model that we've got is producing unacceptable results despite enormous spending. The second is that personalized tutoring works. And AI, again, is the first time in human history that we've had some sort of an option to provide personalized tutoring to individual students. Third, to reemphasize, this is not removing adults from school. It's giving them a more focused and like a genuinely human role so that they can serve that better, which is probably an underserved part of sending your kids to school, is that all that becomes secondary. And then fourth, the risks of using AI can be completely mitigated through curriculum limits, testing, auditability, human oversight. In fact, they could be open sourced. So now the curriculum and the lessons plans and the entire knowledge base, what to teach, how to teach it, who to teach it to, that could just be open sourced on GitHub, made, reviewed, improved by anyone so that it's actually iterative almost day to day. So the status quo is not really enough. We spend plenty on education. We're going to get into that in the weeds when we're talking through this debate. And more importantly, the failures of the education system are not evenly distributed. What happens is that in the current model, if you're a good student and you can figure out how to like motivate yourself, you're strong, supported, you're present, if you can keep pace with a group lesson, you'll do great. But if you are a student that is behind, if you're embarrassed to ask a question and then a second one and then a third one, you're probably not learning that particular lesson as well. Let's say you're absent for 2 weeks, whether by design or something unplanned happened in your life, you're behind 2 weeks. You have all of these other issues. What if you're bored because the class is going too slow? So now you're underperforming in the metrics, even though you're capable of following along. So the other version of that is that you get completely lost because the class is too fast. The teacher doesn't have the ability to stop and slow down on all of this. So this is not a criticism of all teachers. I definitely think it's a criticism of some, and it's well-deserved, but we'll also get into that a little bit later. This is mostly a criticism of the job that's been designed for teachers and what they're signing up for, which is just an impossible task, right? One of the main things that I'm probably going to leverage in this debate is Benjamin Bloom had something called a 2 sigma problem. And basically what it showed is that one-on-one tutoring produces dramatically better outcomes than conventional classroom instruction. That's probably been known for a while, but the problem with that is that, which has also been known for a while, we just simply don't have enough personal human tutors for every single human child. AI is the very first thing that has been able to change that. And only recently, within maybe the last 4 or 5 years, it's gotten to the level that we can actually approach this. So this is not just AI hype. This is going to be based on all sorts of meaningful gains that happened before even ChatGPT existed. And I'm excited to go through some of those specific examples.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Paranoid. I appreciate it. MC, I did hit the mute. There you go. Actually, now it's off. MC, if you'd like to give your opening statement, please. And do you want this screen share up?
I will in a second. So I'm debating the Paranoid American. I just want to know. I want everybody to know I'm more American than him. I got the American shirt. I got Sasquatch on it. I use Sasquatch soap. And look at this background. So I win. I win that competition. Look. There's a monster truck. Look at that.
How many years did you serve in the military?
I took my earbuds out even, so all right.
How many years did you serve?
I did not serve.
Oh, I guess I win on that one.
No, my background. My background.
I guess that counts. That's way better than the years that I put my life on the line for your freedom, sir. That's great.
Of course not. I do, I sometimes I do appreciate those that serve. So thank you very much. I appreciate that you did serve. And if you look at my the description of my channels, I care deeply about veterans. So if you really do, and if your audience cares about veterans, they should go to Paranoid American on YouTube and hit subscribe and like. Thank you.
Wait a second. Wait. I'm a veteran too.
And well, they're already here. They've already liked you. How could they not?
All right.
All right, MC, let's get back to business, sir. Your opening statement, please. See, they're too busy goofing around.
I know. I know why. I have to change what I'm sending out to people on my side also. So just a sec. Give me a second. If your audio can be bad, I could have some delays here. Okay. Browser 4 and
just so we're on the same playing field, who here went to public school versus private school? Any answers?
I went to public school.
Okay. Also public school.
Yes. Public school.
Okay. Even footing then.
Yeah. Though I did, I do homeschool our kids, as I said previously. So, all right, I'm ready. You can display it to the everybody.
Okay.
All right. So the prompt is: should we replace teachers with AI? But I'll just say who I am. MC Toon. Live is my channel where I do live debates mostly, and live streams and fun stuff like that. And then my Conspiracy Tunes channel is where I do pre-recorded videos. You can find me on Facebook as Michael Toon, or X, Discord, TikTok, MySpace, Friendster, GeoCities as either MC Toon or MC Toon 27. So,
you got an Angel Fire link you could give us too?
Yeah, it's just sorry. So what does? So I thought about the prompt here, so I wanted to be true to the prompt. What does replacing teachers with AI look? And so I asked AI to generate a picture, and it actually got a picture of Sarah and put it in there. So yeah, there you go.
What the fuck? I'm sorry.
I don't know where
be serious right now, but I can't.
I don't know where it got your picture from, but anyway, but if you look at, all right, so I asked AI to generate this, and if you look at the board behind, the math is all goofy. It's, oh my gosh. Anyway, so this is current. And so taking the prompt at its word, replacing the teacher looks like this, right? So that's what I'm responding to. I don't think that the prompt, I didn't take the prompt to mean, that it's, not having AI assisting, right? I'm not against AI assisting doing admin tasks or grading or lessons planning. And I don't think that it means that students wouldn't be interacting with AI chatbots. So unfortunately, a whole lot of your stuff, Paranoid American, was kind of this stuff, and it wasn't true to the prompt. And I was worried about it. And I didn't know where you were going to go.
Well, I want to be clear that I am for the AI taking over the teaching role, and not necessarily the administrative assistance part, but the actual education part.
So like more like you are. Like
this picture right here, pretty close, minus the goofy mouth on the background.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyway, for me, it's the human part. And I took it to mean that there wouldn't be a whole lot of teacher in the class, right? It would be maybe individualized. Maybe they don't even have a classroom anymore. But the classrooms are valuable, and I say that as a homeschool parent. I see the value in classrooms. Now, as a homeschool parent, we provide that in other ways. So another thing that a teacher can provide is the classroom management and real world complexity. So if it is a classroom environment, which I don't see people not sending their kids off to schools anymore, they're still going to be sitting somewhere. If you got two parents working or whatever, they're going to be in a building somewhere, and probably a shared room. And so, you're going to have the guy saying that was churlish. And darn it, I forgot his other word. Anyway, so more to the point here, I think ethics are a challenge for AIs. The LLMs are just computer programs. And there is no ethics built into them. And there's a whole lot of ethics involved in teaching. Not that all teachers get it right, but you can talk to them, and you can take them aside, and you can fix it, because they're people that have motivations, and you can potentially, move them out and fire them and do whatever. For an AI, ethics can be trained in, but just manually. You can train them on, they did this wrong in the past. Let's train the next iteration of it to not do that wrong thing. In the meantime, you played an experiment on whoever was the guinea pigs that were being taught, and maybe had some things that shouldn't have been taught. And then it's when you put the guardrails on, it's just about controlling behavior. The LLM does not have anything internally. It doesn't have any morals. It doesn't have a compass, or any of that kind of stuff. No matter how it feels when you talk to it as a chatbot. Bias is another problem, and I think you kind of showed your hand by saying Rockefeller, but I would think that you'd be against this. Tell me if you disagree later, but what you feed the LLM is all that it has, but it's broad. So if you feed an LLM the story Lord of the Flies, it learns all of the things in Lord of the Flies, including all of the bad behaviors. And when you feed an AI and LLM all of the writings of, the annals of human history, you get a whole lot of negative examples of how people get ahead by doing the wrong things, unethical things. And since an LLM can't distinguish because it doesn't have a moral compass, it doesn't know whether or not something in particular is good or bad in order to accomplish a goal. And we've seen that with Claude in some of the tests where they've done they have these lemonade stands and these kind of tests that they run where the AI has to do negotiating and contract stuff, and it just goes and screws the vendors because it doesn't have a moral compass, and and the goal is to make as much money as possible. So screw everybody. These counter examples are seen as the LM in training. Anyway, there's the bias. We've got then, I clicked to the wrong screen here. There we go. Pacing. You did cover this, so I'm not too much in a disagreement here, but different students learn in different ways and at different paces. And so if I'm taking the classroom where there is a bot at the front of the classroom versus an individualized thing of some sort. And so I think a chat bot would not necessarily have this exact pacing issue, but the example is a student is bored and needs to be challenged, but they might get lower grades in that topic just because they're bored and it's beneath them and they find it dumb and not challenging or engaging. But if you just look at, well, they got a D on this, they have a pattern of getting Ds, we better move them to the lower class. Well, that's the wrong thing for a student that needs to be challenged more. So a human can see this. And again, if we just replace the human with the robot at the front of the room, that will be missed. And then that will be an opportunity that was squandered potentially. Privacy and security. Now I work in computers. I write software. This is a huge problem. Cybersecurity is getting worse and worse. I don't see it getting better, unfortunately. But if you take large systems and you put more and more stuff into it, and AI are basically cataloging the interaction in order to know whether or not you should do something for a student or what you should do with a student or whatever their issues are. That's all just now categorized and stored, and it's a huge target. And who is notorious for having bad security? Well, governments and schools. And so large databases with years of profiling done by AI. I am not comfortable with that at all. And I'm hoping paranoid people wouldn't either. Prompt leading. You see this, people who have entire YouTube and TikTok channels dedicated to making AIs say things that they want them to say, which has nothing to do with the actual answer, because an AI, an LLM, predicts text. It tells you what you want it to tell you. So if the student is engaging in questions, it can wind up teaching the wrong things. And this may be unintentional. I think a lot of the time it's unintentional. I see people talking, well, the AI told me this. I'm like, well, what was your prompt? Like, yeah, that was the problem. You asked it a leading question. It got the idea of where you were going, and it told you what you wanted to hear. Anyway, computer programs, no matter how human they feel, cannot replace real personal and emotional value with human beings. Do not replace teachers with humans. And there you go.
My turn to respond.
Oh, hold on. We're finishing up opening statements. All right. And pardon me. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, both of these gentlemen are dual streaming. So please feel free to head over to their channels, like, subscribe, share, and absolutely feel free to send them all of your money. We love that. We will get through our debate. We will read and respond to your kind super chats. And then, of course, we will open up the panel for open panel Q&A. So if you have something to say this evening towards the topic or towards either of these two regarding the topic, you will absolutely have your opportunity to do so at the end of the debate. Gentlemen, I leave the floor open to you.
All right. I want to have the opportunity to address some of the great points that you made and your response there. So I guess the first major thing that both of us need to figure out what like the level playing field is that I'm definitely not saying that kids go into a warehouse and there's just laptops set up and like a big video security system and like a loudspeaker yelling like, hey, number 352, sit back down. Like that's not necessarily. I think that the strongest argument here is that right now the number of roles that a teacher has to play, but not just that, the qualifications in order to become a teacher, we can decouple that, right? If you're a software engineer, imagine the decouple sort of practice where now you don't have this one single point of failure that's responsible as this like turnkey for everything. And now you can actually have somebody dedicated just to the disciplinarian, the human aspect, and everything else is taken over through education. And I'll go through the bullet points on this. So we're not replacing adults being there to supervise and adults being there to mentor and adults being there to help. Like, hey, I see that you're struggling. How can I help? That kind of a thing that a computer wouldn't be able to pick up on, and those nuances, that doesn't get removed. But that human in the room is not required to know how algebra works or, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue. They don't have to know any of that. They just have to have personal skills, and that would allow them to focus on developing other children's personal skills, which I think is like one of the main things that's lacking aside from failing test scores, which we'll also get into. Also, I just want to point out that you were basically comparing all of AI to a small little sliver of AI, which is an LLM, a large language model. There are a longer list than I'm even going to read out, of all the different types of AI. But you've got rule-based systems that can be trained. They all use neural networks to train, but it's not a large language model. You've got knowledge tracing systems that use Bayesian knowledge tracing. You've got adaptive assessment systems. You've got recommendation engines. Here's maybe a more practical example. You go on Netflix, or there was something called the Music DNA or the Music Genome Project, and it's really great, like a Pandora or Spotify of, hey, you like these artists, so maybe you'll like this artist. That's also a form of AI that could also be used to like, oh, you're engaged by this type of teaching and this type of content. Well, here's more that you'd be interested in. Also a form of AI. You've got classifiers, you've got predictive models, you've got all sorts of speech and computer video systems that can analyze micro expressions and see if they're actually engaged, if they're making eye contact. So this is not just can LLM replace education, it's AI kind of as a whole. And I know it's nebulous, but it's far beyond just the limitations of an LLM. For the sake of this, we can kind of hyper-fixate on the LLM aspect, but just knowing that you could extrapolate that a little bit further. I'll make these quick because there's a few other points that you made that I think were good. You mentioned the human guinea pig experiment. I feel that this is the direction we're headed in anyways. So guinea pig experiment or not, this is probably what's going to happen. We're not going to just take the Lord of the Flies, train an LLM around that with like a RAG model. So now it just knows Lord of the Flies. It's going to know Lord of the Flies. It's going to know every other book ever written in English or any other language that you want. It could also be fed lesson plans, curriculum, Cliff's Notes, all sorts of great analysis that a teacher would never, even if they had their entire lifetime to read, wouldn't have every single take on Lord of the Flies, whereas an AI or even an LM would have that. And we've got decades, if not centuries worth of effective lessons plans that have already been recorded. Also, there's a conflation where if you mention Claude, for example, and OpenAI and Grok and Gemini and any other million versions of these, this is conflating cloud-based systems with what could be a locally running model so that a school could just have it running in its own server, not connected to any other service, not have to pay for it outside of energy costs. And then on top of that, there's not really necessarily the concept where you say, well, as the kids are talking to interacting with it, it's like feeding off them, retraining that. That's not necessarily true either. If you take an LLM model and you host it locally, it's essentially solid state intelligence. It is a read-only sort of tool, and that as you ask it, it's non-deterministic, so you might not get the exact same answer every single time depending on the prompt, but it's not necessarily, it won't be able to tell it something, clear the context, and then ask it that new information. It will not have that accessible to it unless you set up a whole extra RAG system and knowledge base and indexing. So there's a few things I just want to make sure that AI can be run locally. It doesn't have to feed the beast. It doesn't have to feed the Department of Defense and Claude and OpenAI or China and all that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that kids are going to have to give identifying personal information that could then potentially get leaked or cause some kind of security issue. In fact, I believe that this type of AI education system could be fully open sourced, so anyone in the world at any time can review all the code, all the instructions, criticize it, improve it, make modifications. If you're a home schooler, you can make like your own version of that. There could be homeschooled editions of this. So possibilities are endless, but I just wanted it to kind of address some of those specific things that you had brought up.
All right. The challenge a little bit here between is going to be that I was responding strictly to the prompt, and you kind of just came alongside with a lot of the things that I think a lot of people do agree with as what AI could do as an assistant in many ways. So I don't disagree, with many of those things.
No, we're done here. This was great. I'll see you guys at the next one.
It kind of is. And that's why I said I was worried about what your take was going to be, and that, you didn't quite, anyway, not the point. Anyway, I am familiar with AI and other systems. This is the book that I used in college. When I took AI in college. Also, for the Uber nerds here, I took this class. Man, if that doesn't get me some nerd street cred, nothing will.
You started with nerd street cred. The books are just an added bonus.
Yeah. Okay.
Just to out myself too, software engineer for going on 25 years. I started making AOL progs and fishers back in the mid 90s.
Nice. Anyway, so I am familiar with the broader history of AI instead of just the LLMs, but I mean there's the only thing that are on the horizon for putting in front of a student in a classroom is LLMs. And when I took these classes, it was right around the corner was what, it's gonna be awesome. And no, it's just keeps going and going and going for decades. That AI, the promise of it is around the corner, but only when the attention paper came out really was the kind of the knee in the curve for LLMs getting the ability to kind of do the things that we're all seeing them do now. So
the attenuators.
Yeah. So is there that coming for some other system other than an LLM? Well, the last 40 years says we have no damn clue. So we don't know if something else is going to actually be the thing that could be something other than an LLM. So I don't know if that gives us anything.
I'd push back a little bit on that and say that classifiers and gate detection, micro expression detection, all of those were being developed far earlier and getting more attention, at least in the mid 2010s. Some of the big trends in the industry was that you could have a video feed, and as people walked by, you could tell how long they were looking at something, if that made them happy, if it made them sad, their age, their gender, all of that was trained on neural networks and has really nothing to do with LLMs other than the fact that they both get trained on neural networks. So I will concede for sure that LLMs have been the most novel, the most approachable, and the most understandable to a layman. That I know what a chatbot is. I know that if I feed in human language, it'll feed human language back out, especially if you can do a speech to text. Now I can talk to it and it can talk back to me, even though at its base level, it's just translating it into text and then spitting the text back out in audio form. I guess I would, maybe as a tangent, but I don't think that I can be easily convinced that humans aren't doing the exact same thing that LLMs are. So when we say it's a predictive, text engine, where if I say a word, the very next word that I'm about to say, in my brain, I'm thinking, what word makes the most sense to say after this word, which is pretty much exactly how an LLM work, even though it might be slightly rudimentary at this point. It seems like it would be the exact same process. I don't think that is for or against this debate. And in fact, I think that maybe it would be more productive if the debate shifted to how much of the academic portion of a teacher could be fully replaced by AI if we both agree that a human being should be in the room to monitor for all of the other human elements. But when it comes to learning, when it comes to here's what you should be learning, here's how I'm going to teach it to you, here's how I'm going to assess how well you're doing at it, that 100% of that could be completely offloaded onto the AI, and that the human individuals in the room can solely focus on the human things.
I don't know even how that would look. But that's not really.
We can spell it out. I've got a whole list of, I think, good examples that we can use as just discussion points.
Well, I think that's not this debate, though. I don't know. I mean, let me say, you did mention, I gave Lord of the Flies as an example, not as the only thing. And then you took off of that and you went to, we're going to bring in all of the other writings. And that was my point, that all of the other writings include a whole bunch of morally bad things that the AI is unable to morally identify as bad. And so we'll say, well, here is a technique that gets to a certain end. And a lot of what an AI, an LLM is doing is telling you, it's predictive. It's telling you what you want it to tell you. And so if you're in some way asking, how can I get this thing? Then it's not going to include at its base any moral compass in that, because it doesn't have that. There's no capability in it.
So 2 pushbacks on that. One is that I definitely don't think, this is maybe my own hot take, but I don't think that teachers should be the ones that are advocating morals to kids. If you're reading Lord of the Flies and you're like, yeah, we should kill Piggy, then there might be bigger issues than the teacher can solve from like a moral and ethical standpoint. That aside from that, I do want to say that there are, you're probably familiar with something called like an adversarial AI. For example, you can set up an adversarial LLM. So as part of the system prompt, if a kid says, hey, should I kill Piggy? Should I kill the fattest kid in my class? Because that's what they're out to do in Lord of the Flies. And it's, I'm morally ambiguous. I'm learning. I don't know if that's good or bad. What should we do here? An adversarial LLM could basically say in the system prompt, hey, no matter what this person asks, always lean towards not harming people. Like if you ever seen one of these long system prompts, they're, paragraphs and paragraphs long. So an adversarial LLM could make it so it's not just neutral, that in fact, the morals are explicitly implied. And again, those can be open sourced. So now that every single parent that's looking and say like, well, what kind of morals are you teaching my kids? Now you can see it. You can read it for yourself. And if you disagree with some of it, or if you're like, well, you know what, I'm not going to teach my kids that dinosaurs existed, you just delete that little line from the system prompt. And now you've got your no dinosaurs existed homeschool version where they also get to learn Lord of the Flies. And I guess on that same point, you don't have to teach your LLM for this specific, say like a 5th or 6th grade English. They doesn't also have to know about the Kama Sutra and American Psycho. It can just know about Lord of the Flies and Mice and Men and other things that are sort of age appropriate. But it can also know Plato, and it can also talk about classical, Neoplatonic ethics if the kid was so inclined to do that, which again, you're not going to get out of a typical 5th or 6th grade English teacher.
Is that what you, as a school administrator, right? What you want? Do you want that, or is that more of a free time thing for the kid to go learn whatever Plato in 5th grade?
I guess as an administrator in this scenario, the administrator would basically be replaced by your sysops guy. Your IT guy is now the principal of the school.
Oh my gosh.
The academic. Like right now you've got a school board, you've got like the English teaching committee, then they get together and they determine here's what we think the kids are capable of. All of those things can still occur. Like you can have that think tank, but again, it's about we cannot scale a human being to be in the classroom and give this one-on-one lesson. AI is the only way that can do it. But we could take every other teacher that's currently in that school, and now they're focused on getting together and determining what books they're going to read, what should we feed this LLM, doing all that feedback loop. There's obviously going to be a flux. Like, you're not just going to turn a switch and all of a sudden all the teachers are gone. But this is going to be a slow progression towards that. So now let me lead this with some point by points, because I think these are some interesting notes. Right now, what we're doing and what we've been doing for the last 20 or 30 years is just not working. And I want to make sure that we're not discussing perfect being the enemy of good here, where it's like, oh, well, AI wouldn't be able to pick up on that nuance, and AI wouldn't be able to see that a kid's struggling, or it might not be able to point out the morality of Lord of the Flies. And I want to remind you that if we've all been to public school, at least one of us has had horrible teachers that maybe didn't have morals. Maybe I had a world history teacher that brought a flask to school and couldn't care less whether or not you passed the test, as long as you turn the Scantron in. So a lot of this isn't comparing AI to the greatest teachers ever. It's comparing mediocre AI to perhaps a good teacher, but also an abysmally bad teacher. And I think across the board, a mediocre AI is better than bad, and a great AI is as good as a great teacher. So it's not even necessarily apples to apples across the board here.
All right. There's a lot of things. You went on for a while. I don't think that replacing an educator with a tech person is going to work. Right? You still need the people, no matter what, that are the educators that specialize in educating and have that skill set, deciding on curriculum and putting in those types of things. And that's what, certainly I agree, they spend a lot of time now not doing that kind of stuff. I'm not proposing a solution to that. That's elsewhere. But I don't think that taking them out of the loop, though, will improve it. You can't put a sysop in for a principal. You still need a principal. You still need the educator to do that. So what else? You went on a long time, man.
It's part of my thing. I'm getting better at it. Just like I'm great at baiting the hook, so I can get a really good, hot take that'll entice you and think that I'm going to replace all humans. But I really just said the teachers, and technically a parasocial worker is not the same as a teacher.
So I think we also still need to be mindful that when formulating prompts, we do have to do it in which we understand colloquially, right? So, for instance, MC Toon and myself included understood that prompt as we should replace teachers with AI. Colloquially, we would say, okay, now the children are going to be taught by an AI via, like the picture that MC put up of Blondie and then replaced it with a little robot.
And
right?
I agree with that.
Yeah, colloquially, we would all understand that. So when formulating prompts, we have to be mindful. We don't want to tease the words because then we end up with a debate bust in that aspect.
Well, to be clear, I guess, in that scenario, you've got the robot in the middle of the classroom. And as I look in that picture, I'm imagining, okay, well, there's a behavior analysis disciplinarian in one of the corners we don't see. And there's another person there that's there to see, like, oh, is someone having personal problems at home? Is this kid being abused at home or whatever, right? Like, those adults exist in that fashion, but I would not consider that teachers. We're talking about the academic lesson plans that you send your kid to 4th grade, you expect them to learn 4th grade reading level, 4th grade math. All of that would be handled by AI. It's only behavior and social interpersonal connections that we handle by adults. And if you
glorified babysitters.
You said the word, not me. It's a very charged word when you're talking about teachers, but yeah, you can have 5 babysitters in a room. None of them have to have any necessarily credentials on math or science or reading or anything that's being taught in the classroom. Just here's how to handle behavior, classroom management. All of that can be completely offloaded. And if you're going to extend the word teacher to them, I mean, someone that you sit next to on a bus that like teaches us something cool. Like, is that a teacher? No, I want to at least define teacher as the core academic, person that's giving, or machine that's giving the actual academic lessons. So is that fair enough where it's not like a clickbaity version?
MC, I think you do disagree with that concept, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
I do.
okay.
I think it's probably for me the other way around, that I think that you can use AI to augment the teacher, in that the teacher doesn't need to be as bound up in time in grading things and in doing the administrative work, right? The administrative work, that's not teaching. Teaching is teaching, and they got to do all this other junk too. And I'm not happy that teachers often need to be doing the, taking care of kids that are fighting and arguing and things like that, right? That's not teaching either. And unfortunately, that has become a huge portion of what many teachers have to do now. And I'd love to have a different solution to that. I don't think AI is in the answer to that necessarily. Maybe it is, but I don't think that's this discussion though. As to, how you train the model, and it's easy to say, well, today these things aren't there. I won't say that. I think that certainly local models are moving forward quickly, and that at some point in the future, it will be reasonable to have a local model that does everything, and you can actually choose to train it on whatever you want to train it. I think those things are all possible. They're not here today, but we're not necessarily talking about the 26-27 school year system that we're, anyway,
I do want to just at least that I do think that it's here today, that it could happen right now, and it's not some future sci-fi thing, especially if you consider, if you were to eliminate the salary of 3 teachers in a school, that would allow you to stage a large, significant model.
So, oh my gosh, what local model do you think that could do that?
Maybe
today?
You could get to like a 90+ billion parameter model. Like usually if someone's going to run a local model now, if you've got a $3,000 GPU, you might be stressing that out at a quantized 27 billion parameter model. A lot of people run like a 9 billion parameter. You can get on a Raspberry Pi, you can load a 3 billion parameter model. I wouldn't say that's going to be the thing that you sit in front of the kid and hope that he learns math from. But if you were to have, I think that for less than $500,000, and I think even that's being generous, for less than $500,000, you could have something that would do the job enough to teach your entire elementary school worth of knowledge.
Okay, so I want a specific though. You said today you think is possible. So today, what existing model today that a school could get their hands on would be something that you think would work today?
I think any like 80 billion or more parameter model, there's so many. If you go on Hugging Face, you can find ones that are explicitly trained in English, some in math, some in physics. So you could find, depending on what your grade level is and what the subject is that you want to learn, could be that model. And the same way that one teacher might have a break period during some classes, you can unload that model from memory and load a different model in. So it's not like you would even necessarily need to have a $500,000 system for every single model loaded.
So, well, all right. You still didn't answer. Kimmy, Quen, Gemma?
Let's go with Gemma as an example, but it would be like an 80 billion plus parameter version.
Okay.
With a million token context or something, if you need all the technical specs for this.
I don't know if Gemma has those, but I don't know if it's as much about the context as it is the training.
The point being made, not to come up with the exact model and then find the deficiencies of that exact model, but it's that I'm not talking about, hey, maybe in the future this could happen. I think that it could, if there was a mandate or if there was some sort of an initiative, it could start happening tomorrow. We don't have to wait for a theoretical model to come down the pipeline.
So now the other thing is, even on the pretty serious hardware, 80 or 90 billion parameters, isn't serving a large number of people at the same time. And so if you got rid of 3 teachers, I think, that's probably now 60 kids to be kind of a low ball that now are going to be interacting with it. And so I don't know. It's not really critical that whether or not you could today. I don't know if you.
Well, an 80 billion parameter model, if you quantized it to 4-bit, it would be about 48 gigs of VRAM, which is on the next wave of consumer hardware, which is coming down the pipe. It's not here yet. The biggest one for consumer, I think, is about 24 gigabyte. It would be like 5090 or something like this.
Yeah. But now you're sending this to 60 kids.
Correct. So each kid, and now
you're not sending this to 60 kids.
Well, right now, we already have quite a large budget per student throughout the U.S., right? It's something around, I've got the exact number, but I believe it's somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 per kid. They also already have, most of them, tablets or laptops. So this wouldn't even necessarily be, all right, now we got to save up all this money and buy all this new equipment.
Well, yeah, they're going to
schools already have a lot
using
of this.
They're going to keep using all that. And so they're going to fire 3 teachers, and they're going to take that money and they're going to buy
hopefully more than 3.
60, well, I mean, you could only fire 1 teacher for the classroom that they're teaching. So let's bring it down to the bottom. You're going to fire 1 teacher and you're going to teach 20 students simultaneously. If there's only 20 students in the class instead of 30, you're going to simultaneously teach 20 students off of whatever today's AI can give you simultaneously. I don't think you're doing it for a teacher's salary.
Well, here's a counterpoint to that. And this one is, I'll say, hypothetical, not that it couldn't happen. It's actually, this has happened, but this isn't part of like any kind of mandate. But a large reason that children in the United States were computer literate between the 80s and the 90s was because at some point Apple, Steve Jobs, decided, hey, I want kids growing up and knowing how to use Apple computers. So he made sizable donations and put Apple computers in a large number of schools, maybe not in equal distribution, but a large number of schools. There's no reason to think that a similar initiative wouldn't take place for all sorts of other, the same way that someone might want to put like an advertising in, like every time you start your lesson, it gives you a little Claude logo or an OpenAI logo. So it's not necessarily the only way to raise money is to fire the teachers.
You've gone the other way now, though, because you're like, we're going to do local models and we're going to do it. All right, we're going to feed it just what we want. But now you're like, oh, we're going to have some.
Well, no, that doesn't imply cloud hosting. That just implies that the company that built this particular model and fine-tuned it and whatever, set it up for the school system, that they could give it. Just the same way that when Apple gave their computers to the schools, it's not like the schools had some kind of subscription service where they had to keep paying Apple now to keep them in the schools.
All right, but Gemma is the only one that you said, and Gemma.
As we talk, if you want, I can come up with an entire list of models that I think would be appropriate. Let's go with Gemma though, for just the sake of conversation.
Okay, well, I do you think that Google is going to now pay to have Gemma in provide the hardware?
You can download that locally and upload it into any VRAM.
And then but they have to provide the hardware. The hardware for this isn't cheap, and right now it's super constrained. It's hard to get.
Well, that's what I was just saying is that you can load a 24 gig model, basically a 40 billion quantized model, into a consumer $3,000 computer right now. So that means that every single kid in that class of, let's say, 20, for now all of a sudden you've got a budget where each of those children could potentially have this, but that would be going forward because now the kids in the next class can also use those exact same computers and the exact same VRAM, but it would just unload whatever model was from that previous class and load in the new one. So this is an ongoing, and not to mention, I want to get into this too as we talk, but this would overcome, I think the average burnout rate for most new teachers is about 4 years. So this would overcome that burnout rate as well, where you're not spending money training a teacher and then losing them immediately.
Well, all right. But that still doesn't scale, because when you go from one class where the teacher is AI to the next class where the teacher is AI, you still need all of that hardware for the next class. You don't get to reuse. It's all simultaneous.
Well, that's why you would fire all of the teachers in the school, but you're not getting rid of adults. You could still bring back in classroom managers, which wouldn't need to be paid at the same level as a qualified teacher that's got a master's degree and all sorts of other specialized training.
Well, I mean, start with the elementary. There's not a whole lot of elementary teachers that have the master's degree. And they're not getting paid that kind of money, right? You're talking high school.
We're also talking glorified babysitters for sure at that early end of elementary school.
So you're not saving money by firing teachers and pouring all of that into the hardware. You are proposing to get rid of the teacher that has a bachelor's degree in elementary ed, and then replacing them with a rather costly bunch of hardware and some additional staff, 1 or 2, 3 other staff. I don't know, right? It sounds to me like it's still a net increase in money potentially.
I definitely don't see it as such, because a classroom of 20 kids, if they each had a dedicated $3,000 system, which by the way, they already have $25,000 being spent on them per year in addition to all of the other expenses, but that would be $60,000 for that class. And that means that teacher is no longer needing to get a salary of 60, 80. If they're in California, maybe it's like in the low hundreds. But now that computer also can be running at all times for all of those kids across all of the different classes. I don't see where the cost prohibitive aspect of this comes up. And in fact, the cost of this go down substantially as you scale it higher and as time goes on. Like I was mentioning, that you can put a model now on a Raspberry Pi. So now what used to be a $3,000 computer 5 years ago is now an $80 computer.
But you said today, I gave you the olive branch of saying we could have this be a future thing. But you didn't want that.
I don't need the olive branch.
You said, okay, so it's not a Raspberry Pi. We're not having the Raspberry Pi do it. We're not having the 5 years from now Raspberry Pi do it. We're having today's hardware do it.
A 4090, which has 24 gigs of VRAM, which you can get built for under $3,000 now for an entire classroom of 30 kids. That's $90,000 per class. For all classes. If you're a teacher and you have 6 different periods, that $60,000 or $90,000 investment in hardware replaces the need to have a teacher in the room for all 6 periods.
No, it doesn't, because
I want to know why.
Because every classroom that has a teacher in it also has students in it, and so now you're only getting, there's no scaling. You don't get any scaling. You have a classroom. You just have a whole bunch of classrooms. And so if you have an average student per teacher ratio of 20-1, right, you have every classroom has 20 students and 1 teacher. And so now you get rid of the 1 teacher and you bring in $60,000 of hardware. And then every single classroom has that same thing. There's no scaling that happens.
I think we're missing a connect somewhere, because if I've got a school that's got 20 teachers, I get rid of all 20 teachers, and now instead of just getting 20 computers, if I had 20 teachers, I'm going to get 400 computers. So
but you have $400,000
per teacher.
But you have 400 students.
Yeah.
So the scale is still the same ratio, the same amount of.
Explain to me though where I'm missing the math. Let's focus on one classroom right now, right? A single teacher that teaches English, and she's got 20 students per class. And let's just say she's overworked. She works 5 out of the 6 periods, right? Whether she had 2 periods, 5 periods, 20 periods in a day, she's only going to have a classroom capacity of 20 children. So at any given point, those 20 kids are only going to have to be using 20 computers for that particular lesson. And when the bell rings and the next class comes in, they're going to use those same 20 computers all over again. So it's not cumulative.
Those students are now going to math class, and the math teacher has been replaced.
Correct.
So you need the 20
Correct.
computers in the math class.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you didn't get any scaling in that. You still need to provide the same amount of hardware per student.
I really don't know if there's any issue. I agree with you, but the scaling is that you replace the math teacher, $60,000 in computers gets rid of $60,000 to $80,000 salary. It's almost a 1-for-1. Those children now get individualized tutored lessons that goes at their same pace, and though that hardware is going to last more than just that year. We're talking about removing a teacher from the classroom. That is 1 year of their salary. If those computers if the hardware itself just doesn't die within 4 or 5 years, you've also just saved 500% on the salary.
You write software, 5 years for a computer is ridiculously long. That's not.
I think 4 years is not out of the realm of possibility. People use these types of GPUs to mine Bitcoin 24/7, 365 days a year for years on end, and they can go for 4 or 5 years without burning out. So I have absolutely no qualms with thinking that.
I'm not talking about burning out. I'm talking about especially right now in AI. Today's hardware is nothing a year from now.
Yeah, but also the models that we have access to are being improved, optimized. They're running on smaller and cheaper hardware all of the time. So if anything, we would be able to load them with even smarter and faster models as time goes on and not have any cost increase. The only cost increase hypothetically would be if energy keeps going up, because now you also have to consider how much energy you're spending to keep these things running.
And they are pretty energy expensive.
About $150 a month to treat. Again, this falls well under the allotment that we're already spending on kids right now and getting absolutely subpar. So on that, if I'd be extra conservative, $20,000 per student from primary all the way through the end. On the low end, it's like 15,000. We're at the top of GDP spending. We're at like 5.8% GDP compared with an average of like 4.7. So we're already overspending. We're blowing our budget on education to begin with.
You've lumped a lot of things into that, and you're only proposing getting rid of the teacher while bringing in additional staff. But the buildings are still there. You still have to hire the janitor. You still have the lunch ladies. You still got all of the facilities and logistics. They don't go away. So
correct.
You can't just say, well, we're just going to take all of the budget and then that doesn't work that way, right? The kids are still going to go sit in a building for 6 hours a day, whatever they are. You still got to bus them around, and none of that stuff is changing because people aren't going to just go and homeschool everybody, right? Go ahead, people, go do that. I'm for it. That's what we do. But I understand the reality of this. And I also understand homeschooling isn't for everybody. Whatever. Don't take how I do it as what I think to be the only way.
You also noticed or noted earlier that you can't just get rid of, these specialists that specialize in teaching and making lesson plans. But I was thinking, don't you homeschool? Are you a specialist in teaching and a specialist in creating lesson plans? Or do you find, like most homeschooling teachers do, there's already a curriculum and resources that you can derive from, right? Well, so clearly you don't necessarily need to be a specialist. And I would extend that even if a teacher needs a bachelor degree, even if they need some sort of teaching certificate. In personal experience, sample size of 1, completely anecdotal, but I'm going on good faith since you also went to public school. I had teachers that just taught from the back of the book. Like, they didn't know when Columbus sailed. They didn't know the difference in like when the Great Reformation happened or why it happened, or necessarily the difference between Protestant and Catholic. Even as long as it was in the back of the book and they could give us a Scantron, and the Scantron answers were also in some teacher guide. A lot of teachers have the opportunity to just kind of completely coast and not fulfill all these extra human obligations, which is why I commend you for realizing that and becoming a homeschooler, because that basically proves part of my point that you don't need some academically trained, certified, Rockefeller institutionalized teacher to make sure your kids understand. And in fact, I think most homeschooling stats probably outperform public education by a pretty wide margin.
Yeah, we went the opposite though of an AI teaching it, and went the opposite of a 20-to-1 parent student to teacher ratio. We went 1-to-1 or 3-to-1, 4-to-1, whatever, and so it's actually the opposite of having it be, basically 20-to-0, where there's no actual teacher there anymore, right? So it's not analogous. I don't think. I'm not saying that you have to have that specialty position. Yes, we buy curriculum and we go through the curriculum. Absolutely, that's what we do. But I teach math and science. My wife teaches basically everything else. I specialize in that. She's special, right? And nowadays, especially if anybody knows the homeschooling, maybe it's just the Midwest. I think it's probably not. There's a whole range of homeschooling. Some people send their kids to a homeschool academy and they actually take regular classes and go between classrooms, and somebody's parent who is specialized in it is actually the teacher for that class. I had when I taught karate, we had a whole family that was they all did that. Their mom taught English at the academy, and they took the class from their mom, but they're all homeschooled. So they went to math class and physics class and music class, and it was all right. So there's a whole range of how homeschooling done. Not the point though. So
well, let me ask you, I don't know your religious background, but if I was to assume you were Mormon, what do you do when you've got 20 kids in the house? How are you homeschooling all 20 of those kids?
Yeah, that's that. I don't know. I'm not Mormon.
It's a matter of scale, right? Like, so, okay. So here's I'm going to go take us on a different route here, just for the sake of advancing the conversation. So in case anyone or you are listening and you're thinking, well, yeah, sure, like a well-designed AI tutor can outclass like my drunk world history teacher. I can't remember her name, which I think I'm going to say was like Mrs. Spencer. Shout out to Mrs. Spencer, who we all knew was drinking alcohol, like vodka, in the back of the room during 7th grade world history. But there is actual evidence that a well-designed tutor can outperform good classroom methods, not just bad methods, not just an absent teacher. This is a fairly recent article from 2025. It was published in Nature magazine. Nature's been around since 1869. It's one of the world's leading multidisciplinary science journals, even though it might sound like a children's thing. This is in the Scientific Reports, volume 15. If you're taking notes, article number 17458. But basically, they had a randomized controlled trial where students got to use a custom AI tutor, and it learned significantly more than students that were in active learning class, like direct teacher interaction. Why? And the AI tutors, the children that use that, spent less time on task and had better test results. They basically spent 49 minutes versus 60 minutes for an in-class lesson. They reported higher engagement. They reported higher motivation. And these were basically tested in all of the different STEM courses. This wasn't just like a single one-off that happened to work in English and didn't work anywhere else. The 3 main points that were cited was that teachers were moving too quickly for some students and too slowly for other ones, because the teacher is the single source of the pace of all information for the entire room. AI eliminates that as an issue. The second one, it was that students were not receiving any kind of personalized feedback. So if they had a specific question, if they got something wrong and they didn't understand why, maybe they got something right because they guessed well and they didn't understand that why either. That also does not get addressed even by having an in-room teacher, whereas the AI allows you to kind of iterate on that. And then finally, most teachers in a room of 20, more likely 30 or more, they're not maintaining consistent student engagement. They're going to have the teacher's pet, you're going to have the favorite, and then some teachers just dislike a certain kid in the class, and usually they get a substandard amount of focus. So this is one example, real world 2025, that this was shown evidence that it's not even comparing the best AI to the worst teacher. This is just AI versus teacher, period.
So I didn't argue against that point at all. I would guess that study had a teacher in the classroom.
Fair point. Here's another aspect of it, that right now, I think that we're in agreement on this, but a teacher, again, we're going to go with public school, not homeschool, not private, but a public school teacher, they do right now have to be a subject matter expert. They have to be a curriculum designer. They have to be a tech worker. You got to figure, if the kid doesn't know how to use the Chromebook, now you got to troubleshoot the Chromebook without sending them out of the classroom, right? They've got to be a counselor. They have to be a disciplinarian, a babysitter, a social worker, all of those roles being added on top of the fact that teachers' salaries are basically lower compared to any other upper secondary educated worker's average salary. So we're expecting far more work, far more hours, far more personal investment with way less pay. And I guess the issue here is that this is not a recipe for success. It never will be. And in fact, we've got all of the evidence over the last 10 years. Right now, I believe that it's math and reading for 12th graders graduating are lowest than they've ever been recorded since the US started recording these kind of metrics. So clearly what's happening right now is a dysfunctional model, and AI seems to address the main pain points of why all of that is not working.
Well, I don't disagree that there are problems, certainly, in the educational system. Whether or not getting rid of the teachers is the question. And I don't think you've made a case, because the article you cited there was likely co-teaching, not replacement teaching. So awesome. I love that. Let's do that. I think that's a great idea as a possibility. But you still have the teacher there. And so things like they need to be a tech coach, right? That's not replacing, that's not the point, right? And whether or not they can tech support the Chromebook. Okay.
Well, I think
go solve that the right way instead of by having the teacher do that.
I think that is the point, though. And if you want to hyper fixate on like a kid not having his Chromebook work, I would be willing, again, just to assume that there's teachers out there that aren't going to send little Billy out of the room to go and talk to the IT guy when she knows what the solution is, because she's had to fix this same issue 20 times across the board. The point there is that we're putting far too many responsibilities on the adult human that's going to be in that classroom regardless. We're just oversaddling them with things that are not conducive to helping them actually be the educator, to actually do the teaching part. Here's a different study that I think does address what we're talking about, maybe a little bit more directly, right? This is basically a support for, again, decoupling the concept of instruction from social order. So in Rand Corporation, which is basically a nonprofit global think tank, probably also Rockefeller adjacent if you care about that kind of thing. But Rand had a 2024 State of the American Teacher Survey. This was published at the end of 2024. And in that survey, across the board, teachers topped their ranked stressors, the main things that either cause burnout or cause them to lose time in the classroom from actually teaching. And at the top of this was classroom management. Managing student behavior was the #1 reason that most teachers said that they got pulled off track or just wanted to stop teaching entirely. So again, it's not just a hypothetical, like, yeah, well, teachers shouldn't have to do all these things. Teachers themselves are saying, I'm not able to teach. I'm spending too much time managing behavior, which is not the academic lesson of teaching. So we could have a person in the room to do the one thing that teachers are complaining about. And again, I'm sorry that I'm sure there's teachers out there to like, thank God, finally I can just focus on teaching because now we have a person in the room that'll do all of like the relationship stuff. Well, bad news is that you're getting fired and we're replacing you with a computer essentially. But that person is also going to be in the room to manage the behavior.
So, I mean, you've identified a problem and proposed a solution that may or may not work. You still need somebody in the room.
Well, I believe I've identified a problem that's consistently getting worse year after year for over a decade with no other viable solution in sight. And here, for the first time in our lifetimes, we have a viable solution that can scale and that can directly address most of these issues.
I haven't seen the case made for that.
Okay, well, I don't know if you're familiar with the case that I mentioned earlier, the Benjamin Bloom 2 sigma problem. It's a pretty standard one. If you weren't directly looking at like educational techniques, I'll forgive you if it never came on your radar. But basically, the Benjamin Bloom 2 sigma problem is a problem of scale. It's the math is very simple. It's that if you have one-on-one tutoring, you will produce exponentially better outcomes than a conventional classroom where you've got one teacher and many students. That's just a simple fact. If you have specialized one-on-one tutoring, you will do better than if you have to share the teacher with other kids. AI is the first time that we have a way to actually address this 2 sigma problem. There's never been another solution to it up until in your example, LLMs. I'd say LLM plus the other 50 plethora of things that could be incorporated. But now we have LLMs at the level that can actually address this 2 sigma problem.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with having that be part of the curriculum. But I'm just saying getting rid of the teacher isn't going to do it. You have the teacher, you have the AI that right? They're already, many of them already using iPads or whatever. It can be right in there, absolutely part of the stuff, but there's still the teacher. And you haven't in your examples found examples yet. Maybe there's some that exist, but found trials where they did not have an actual teacher in the classroom. They've replaced them with administrators and behavior monitors. Right? That's kind of what's left then, right? You've got the guy at the front of the room, sitting here like this, it's just a proctor, right?
I feel
it feels
I see where you're coming from.
It feels like 1984 to me, if you're doing that.
I see where you're coming from, and I completely understand. I also think that part of your responses here, though, are comparing an ideal to it's ignoring what's actually happening in most classrooms right now, and you're presenting an ideal. The greatest scenario for sure would be this teacher that can cover all of these different topics, and it's the one that has this personalized instruction. But again, going on my anecdotal firsthand experience, there were classes that I went in, the teacher wouldn't care if you slept all day. They wouldn't care if you got anything right or wrong. Just turn in the Scantron, turn in the homework, let me get my paycheck. So in those scenarios, which are very real, shout out Miss Spencer, the AI would objectively be able to at least have metrics that were measured that even if it's doing a crap job, it could be improved far beyond what my drunk world history teacher would have gotten into. So I believe, again, that it's not a let perfect be the enemy of good. Let an actual viable solution to these very easily definable problems that teachers themselves are reporting, and have something that can actually solve that for under budget, for something that would actually pay for itself within 1 year and then continue to last for another 4 or 5 years. So now if we did have extra budget, we could now you can have 3 or 4 different people in that room for more individualized, like social training as opposed to the educational layer?
I don't think you've made the case for budget very well yet.
Okay, here we go.
Maybe your math teacher was at fault here. Maybe that's what we're getting at.
The math, I think we agreed on. The math of $3,000 right now, which is only going to get cheaper as we go on. I don't want to be circular on this, but I don't see how you've shown me my math didn't add up at some point where I was like off by an order of magnitude. My math is working out exactly the same as your math, but for some reason you're putting out like, oh, well, that computer is going to break down after 3 or 4 years. Great. Even if it does, you could still buy a brand new computer for every single student in class every single year, and it would still be cheaper and better.
I don't know if you've paid attention to how much money the Frontier models have been paying for their stuff. Holy crap. But all right. This isn't about, this isn't about the budget. This really isn't. So I don't
it's fair point. Yeah, it's not about the budget.
Off topic.
But I do think that the budget is an extra cherry on top, that it would make money for schools or it would save money for schools.
You know, schools they're not capable of doing that. It's school budgets are black holes we're talking about.
I feel like you just added a little bit on to my side on that. Yeah, no, I agree. Schools are not capable of a lot of things, but they could be.
Oh my gosh.
Here, let me go to another. We're going to step away from budget, if that's okay, unless you've got a different point that you want to.
Yeah,
okay. So right now, here's another very real issue. Teachers are incredibly hard to find as is. And this has been getting worse and worse since COVID, and doesn't seem to be a trajectory that's reversing itself. For example, even if you love the current teacher model that we have right now, which you shouldn't, and you're wrong, but if you do love the current model, the labor market is simply not producing enough fully certified teachers to maintain it. And if we've got a system that depends on a scarce human resource for every unit of instruction, we simply cannot scale. Here's some statistics, so I'm not just saying words, right? NCES, this is the National Center for Education Statistics. This is the 2024 to 2025. So last year, 74% of public schools had difficulty filling at least one teaching position. High poverty schools had more than 75% of students filling a lower share of vacancies, even if they had fully certified teachers. The number one most common hiring problem is that there's not enough qualified candidates and there's too few applicants. Part of that reason of not having qualified candidates is the master's degree, is being a subject matter expert, is having some sort of teacher certification. In many cases, you also might need to have like a special ed qualification in case they wanted to assign you to like a special ed class. So there's all these multiple qualifications. All of that's red tape. That's government Rockefeller red tape. And if you can cut all of that and eliminate it, now all of a sudden the base of human resources that you can put in that classroom to actually help those children grows exponentially. NCES also reported that 64% of schools had a lack of qualified candidates, and 62 said too few applied.
All right, you went a long time. I have a couple questions then that right, I'm not disagreeing with that. That sounds reasonable, not having looked at it, but it sounds reasonable. Why is it that teachers are hard to find, qualified teachers? And why is it that the high poverty schools are harder to find teachers for, and without having any knowledge of it? I wonder, is it because a lot of the time teachers are not teaching, that it is that they're concerned, they look at it, they go, I'm not going to be teaching, I'm going to be dealing with the issues of having kids do the kind of things that they do and having to deal with all the challenges other than teaching. And that's why. And then again, why at high poverty? Well, it's clear to me, those are the schools that teachers don't want to go to because of the clientele.
They don't want to get shot teaching math.
So here's the challenge. So we're going to not have teachers, and instead we're going to have somebody that's not a teacher, that's getting paid less than a teacher, come into that same room, and their only job now is to deal with a thing that nobody wants to deal with because it's the reason why teachers don't want to be teachers. This is going to be a harder position to fill.
Well, so the key there though is that it's the teachers that say, I don't want to do that job because I want to be a teacher. I don't want to do these other 20 things that you're expecting of me. But I don't think that's a fair equivalence to say, well, nobody wants to do those other 20 things. There's people that might actually be interested in helping develop kids' social skills, might want to be, but there's babysitters out there, there's daycare centers. All of those resources, anyone that's qualified to work at a daycare for certain ages or after school YMCA programs, anything, now all of a sudden the pool of people that's able to now enter that school and help children just grew exponentially. So yeah, I don't think that it's the teacher that benefits in this scenario because the teacher's job is out of there. But yeah, and instead of just one person that's now paid less than the teacher, you could have 3 people, you could have 4 people. If the computers last for 5 years, now you can have 6 people per classroom and all of their focus is on that behavior management, and the AI doesn't have to be distracted by behavior problems.
You're not getting rid of an underpaid teacher who doesn't want to be there because the social problems are the reason they don't want to be there, and finding multiple other people paid less to do it, where the basically the thing that they're being asked to do is to do the thing that nobody wants to do.
No,
that's going to be a harder
false.
job to fill. How
that's an absolute saying nobody wants to.
I not nobody. Yes, I'm using a generalization there.
I get the hyperbole, but we're also in a moment where AI is offsetting many of people's jobs. So once the AI replaces the teacher's jobs, it's also replacing people in other industries. So now you have a huge workforce that is looking for jobs. So yeah, it might be underpaid, but now there's more roles opening up.
You've been listening too closely to Dario. I don't think he's right about that, and I think the market has took him seriously for a while. And people don't know Dario, the guy that's the Anthropic CEO, has said white collar jobs are going away, and so CEOs and decision makers at companies are like, oh, well, we better stop hiring because whatever, AI is going to do everything for us. And then they stopped hiring, and then they found out that their production went down, and it was a problem. And now they're hiring again. Maybe some are, I don't know. It's still the market is still in transit flux. That's the word. And I don't think that's the case. Not the point either, but I don't think we're seeing that the people who are white collar workers who are making $100,000 to $200,000 a year are going to be like, oh, what do I do now that I've been fired from my white collar job? Oh, I know. I'll go to the inner city and I'll work with those nasty kids that nobody wants to work with. Sorry if I'm being way too generalized here. I don't see that happening at all.
Well, I don't know if I agree with the premise. I fully understand what you're saying, but the difference between a teacher that wanted to be a teacher and went to school to be a teacher and got the certification and spent all the money to go through college has a different expectation of salary than would somebody that didn't. Somebody that basically is equivalent of a social worker, a daycare worker, a Walmart greeter, the grandma that wants to work at Walmart because she wants to be around people. That could technically be someone qualified to be in a classroom full of children that helps with behavior issues, that helps with disciplinary or just attendance issues, like all of those administrative aspects. For every teacher that you get rid of, I fully believe you could replace them with at least 2 or 3 different people that didn't need to be a teacher, that didn't need to have that expensive education.
So Paul Schober just looked it up. Average teacher salary in the U.S. is $67,000. Don't know how accurate that is.
Extra $7,000 left.
But you just proposed taking that $67,000 and splitting it up amongst 3 people. So now you've got 3 people making $22,000 a year to replace the teacher that was making $67,000 a year. That didn't scale. We're not getting the people that 3 people in a classroom for $22,000 a year. That's not going to happen.
I would disagree. It does scale. It scales specifically because you could throw money at it to scale. Right now, hypothetically, if you were like all teachers are now getting paid $500,000 a year, maybe, but the pipeline still requires them to go to school, get the education, get the certification, enter that pipeline, and then get into the school system. But you can literally throw money to just have more people in the classroom for management, throw more money at the models to get bigger faster. So if we want to get beyond budget, who cares budget? Let's say if our focus in this country was to improve education across the board, then why would budget even have to come in? Because truly you can't scale humans, you can scale money.
Yeah. The reality is we're not going to get away from budgets. That's just not going to happen. So, but you were making the point that you're going to take the 67,000 per year teacher and put 3 people in their place. That was your position.
Absolutely. And it still is.
For 22,000 apiece. And your response to that was, let's just spend more money. But hold on a second. Your premise started with, we're going to save money by firing the teacher, hiring 3 people for the same amount of money, and then, oh wait, oops, the money was a problem. Let's just spend more money. Yeah, see what happened there?
To be clear, I was not suggesting spending more money as a solution to weasel out of whatever point you were making. It was that you said that you can't scale that. Absolutely, you can scale it. You can scale it by throwing money at it. However, you can't just scale qualified teachers. You can't just turn a knob and all of a sudden you've got 200% more qualified teachers that are applying for these roles. There would be a very long pipeline for them to get up to speed and then have to apply to those different jobs. Whereas you could throw money at it. And if we want to go back to the budget aspect, it would still be a savings. Because again, if you assume that 4 years, which I think is hyper conservative, but if $60,000 in hardware can last you for 4 years, the first year they're all paid for by getting rid of that $60,000. The second year, now you can have 2 full-time adults in the classroom in addition to all the computers. So now you've got 2 adults instead of 1. The next year you can add another 2, and in the 4th year, if the computers still haven't shut down, which they probably wouldn't have, now you can have 6 different adults in addition to those computers that have taken over the academic layer. So now 6 people to help manage a classroom and 1 AI to help manage the academic aspect. To me, that sounds like the math works out. You have more people. It solves all of the issues that it seems like you had a problem with. Did I carry a 1 somewhere where I shouldn't have?
You said you write software, but do you actually ever? A lot of software engineers don't, I suppose, but I've dealt with the hardware part of it too. Like, I know how long computers last. They, like, 4 years in, you're like, this guy's getting pretty old. It's time to move on.
Right, but you're describing that if you need that 4-year-old computer to run the latest software, the latest games, latest everything. If you have a solid state model that loads into VRAM and just sits there, you don't need to upgrade to the newest and latest and greatest and have new 3D capabilities or any of that. Once you have a model that loads into a card, that's it. If that computer were to run for 100 years, it could maintain the exact same efficacy that it had on day one. So it's not the same as you need to keep upgrading your computer can stay up with times. I mean, the same thing with school books, right? There's some schools where they only get a new book every 10 years, despite the fact that new information might have come out. And sometimes they just kind of like blot it out. Like, oh, this got changed. Let's go ahead and cancel out this part of the school book. It's the exact same premise.
I don't know that's even the case. Even in topics where there isn't a lot of change, like history from 100 years ago, right? There isn't a whole lot of changing of that. They don't keep books around that long. I like, that was one of the problems I had. And I have, is this, and I don't know. I've got a handful of books that I tried to sell back when I was in college, and I didn't sell back because they changed the book next year. And why? No reason, whatever reason. They just don't keep the books around that
to make
long.
money.
And well, the schools don't make a lot of money on the books.
Well, the book publishers that changed it to the new version, they're the ones that make money.
Yeah, but the teacher at that university who's like, well, what's our book? It's this book. They're not making more money. They don't have a motivation to change to the new one other than whatever. It means nothing to them, plus or minus. They're not making more money for it. That's not their motivation. Right? I assume you went to university.
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I just got to say,
school and to university.
Hold on. That's different than most of the people I debate, by the way. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Wait, don't worry, MC. I would only put you up with the smartest ones. Don't worry.
Oh, so you won't ever host a flat earther?
No, I will. I refuse flat Earth debates.
Oh,
wow, really? That's a new one.
Yeah, absolutely. There was only one exception I was willing to make, kind of as a favor, but outside of that, I refused to host flat Earth debates. It was actually Project Shaney. Paranoid had recommended somebody. I forget who it was, and I was only going to like to debate. I believe he was a flat earther.
Project Shaney?
Well, Project Shaney made the recommendation. I forget the guy's name, but apparently he had already interacted and engaged.
So the topic was
the guy was a flat earther, and I know that Craig McNeil is very pro kicking flat earthers' asses, and he's bugged me a lot to bring flat earthers on. So the request was made from Project Shaney. I was only going to make the accommodation because Project Shaney asked me. So I was like, this is a favor to her. Fine. And then I said, okay, I'll do it if this dude wants to debate Craig McNeil, because Craig's been begging for me to host one forever. So it was like two dual favors in one. And the guy said he's already had McNeil on before, didn't like him, whatever. And so that was
guy, though. I don't know why they would say that.
So I was like, fine. That was it. If you guys don't want to do it, I'm never going to do one. So that was the only time I was going to offer a flat earth debate to my platform. But otherwise, I don't want them for many reasons that you could probably figure out, MC, on your own just by context clues.
Well, let me just steer back. I guess we're getting close to wrapping up our final statements, but I'm curious because I know the last time I was on here for debate, I feel like factually my approach was very strong. It was all objective facts, but I realized too that part of this format, it's competitive. It's almost like a competitive sport. So sometimes even if you maybe lost a point or if you're conceding on something, there might be a little ego where it's like, okay, they made a point, but I'm not going to concede anything because I don't want to see as not being the winner of this, competition. So we started this out, and MC Toon, you mentioned like, well, I thought you meant just replace all humans entirely or all adults, and not that you might also still have these assistants in the room. Fine, but would you concede at least that the problems that we have currently are getting worse, and that AI is a possible viable solution for addressing some of those problems?
Definitely agree that things seem to be getting worse. Though I'm not deep in that topic, so take it with a grain of salt. Is it possible your scenario where the teacher is done away with and maybe just one other person is in there instead, something like that? Can I conceive of something like that? And there's no lecture anymore, and the students are just face down in their iPads. I don't like that. There's many problems I have with that, but I can say, okay, that is a model that does have at least a testability to it. The problem is, of course, who wants to have the education of their kid be the test? Not me, but I guess though at the same time, we're all just chucking our kids out into getting tested. So who knows, being the guinea pigs in somebody's new idea about something.
worse things have happened between interactions with students and their underage or teachers and their underage students than would happen with an AI.
You know what? I think that's easy to say. Because yes, we all probably heard about that one teacher that did that one thing with that one student.
That one time, never again.
Not just that one teacher, multiple times. Like what? Yes. Why didn't that teacher get fired the first time, the second time, the third time that some student? Yes, 100%. Is that going to happen? Not like that with an AI. Can, through prompting, an AI present something that is inappropriate? Yes. Can you guardrail that? Yes. Is it perfect? Still no. Maybe you can reduce the numbers. And of course, you've got all these students, they're all on their phones anyway. There's only so much you're going to do to guard them from all that stuff. They have access to the whole internet. They're going to get all that stuff or not. It's going to be more about parents and family and their social engagement than teachers in a lot of ways. Not always. Certainly the captain, my captain teachers are going to have their amazing moments, but
I believe he had a relatively small class too of like 15 people.
He did have a small class. Yeah. And I think small classes are great. Hey, that's throwing money at the problem. And I think that's, if you're going to throw money at a problem, well, that might be one of the ways to do it. And there's a whole lot of bloat in the school systems. I don't think that there's going to be administrators that are actually going to be able to solve that much, but
I guess go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say we can move into closing statements and then go ahead and move forward if you'd like.
Sure. I just want one extra clarification. It's not even that you pushed back on this, MC Toon, but for anyone listening, it's like, oh, this would never work. I just also want to clarify that this isn't just sitting kids down with a worksheet and access to ChatGPT and like, have at it, kid, do the best you can. It would be about having constrained, curriculum aligned, standards based, specifically trained AI tutors and if you're familiar with other AI, like with a RAG system, a retrieval augmented generation, where you can actually put the exact material that they need into the context, so it's always there. Plus, here's an extra benefit, is that there's a lot of parents, and I know that's not a qualifier, but there's a lot or a quantifier, but there's a lot of parents that don't necessarily know what happens in the classroom, and they wonder, like, what are the teachers teaching my kids, if at all? What happened during this sort of conflict? Well, at least when it comes to what are they teaching my kids, an AI system could have a full assessment, audit log, all sorts of that. And when it goes to the interactive assessment of the individual student, those can have guardrails. Those can basically, and there was a study, someone named Bastani actually tested between just giving unguided access to something like ChatGPT, where it improved practice performance, but it decimated test scores because no one was they weren't retaining anything. They were just like, hey, what's the answer to this question, and get it, and they would check it off. But once you remove the unbridled access and you basically put a safeguarded tutor in there that's like, don't tell the kid the answer, don't just give the answer, tell them how to find it on their own, that entirely mitigated that particular harm. Again, not something that you brought up, but I just want to point out because that does come up as a pushback. So I'll have a brief sort of wrap up to this. It doesn't need to be 8 minutes.
Let's let MC with his closing statement first, and then Paranoid, you actually get the last and final say. So MC, your closing statements, please.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sarah, for hosting this. It's been good. Thank you, Paranoid American, for an engaging debate, a little different than what I normally do. And I think it's less contentious, actually, really. I think that you and I are not all that far apart on where we are. The things that you described, where an AI is assisting and doing some teaching and on their iPad or on their whatever the computer they're using, where the curriculum has been built into the AI, and then there's some sort of an interactive system where they're just not just doing the homework, but there's some, integration with that. I think this is all great stuff. I think it absolutely will improve things. I don't think that getting rid of the teacher and replacing the teacher, even if it's with 2 or 3 people that are not teachers but somehow disciplinarians, I don't think that's it. I see big value also in AI assisting in the admin part of it, the grading part of it, actual written, not handwriting, but, storytelling and essays and things like that. AI and LLMs now can actually critique that kind of stuff where, before that really wasn't super good. So I think that's all good stuff. And the studies you brought up, I think for the most part were in agreement with what I'm saying. But where I'm just like, I don't get it, is taking that teacher out of the room. I'm not gonna go for that. I think you miss too many things. So anyway, thanks a lot. And I look forward to the grilling afterwards.
The grilling. I love it. Paranoid American, your final thoughts, please.
Okay. So just keep in mind, again, the reality that we're actually living in right now, our actual problems in our waking world, and not some idealistic perfect versus good scenario, right? Right now, we're spending more and we're getting worse outcomes. We've all agreed on that. Teacher pay has fallen in real terms over the last decade, over the many different decades. Teachers on average are working 50 hours a week. They earn less than comparable workers. 3/4 of all public schools can't even fill their teacher vacancies with certified teachers. The teacher prep enrollment is below where it was a decade ago. So even if the schools were able to hire more teachers, they don't exist. The qualified people that could fill those roles do not exist at the same levels that they did a decade ago when they were also underfilled. Meanwhile, 1/3 of all 8th graders in this country are below basic reading. 8th grade math hasn't recovered since it collapsed in 2022 from all the remote work. And 12th grade reading and math at this exact moment is the lowest on US recorded history since they began recording these assessments. In addition to all that, something we even bring up that's even a bigger problem is chronic absenteeism. It's far above pre-pandemic levels, and it's not a temporary issue that you can just kind of wait out, right? What I've been describing here and all these issues that we're talking about, these have been systematic issues with the architecture of the public education system as a whole, and they've been problems for the last 5 or 6 different decades. It's just that right now they're becoming exacerbated. They're becoming more and more visible because of population growth, because of inflation, because of teacher burnout. All of those things are objective realities that are not going away. And they're objective realities in the exact same world where AI is developing in leaps and bounds. And I want to emphasize that this AI instruction, AI is replacing the educational layer, the teacher in the classroom. This is not a luxury sci-fi experiment to happen years from now, maybe when computers get good enough. It's a today obvious response to a completely broken labor model. So we've got a scarcity of human experts that are trying to personalize education for millions of students at the same time. We should move teachers out completely of this impossible all-in-one role that we're burdening them with, and basically replace the instructional layer of teachers with personalized AI tutors. And that'll free up all of the adults, especially ones that aren't qualified to be teachers, that now they can focus on the supervision, the behavior, the mentorship, the safety, and the social development. So this, again, it's not sitting a bunch of 5-year-olds or 5th graders inside a warehouse with laptops and like a connection to ChatGPT. This is something that will decouple the teaching element from all the parts that the teachers don't want to do, so that we can basically have something greater than the sum of its parts.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, MC, I muted you for the typing. Bad juju.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Most people forget that they're doing that. All right, I've dropped the link backstage. There's quite that actually panel filled up backstage really fast. Thank you so kindly. I've got James with his new membership here at the Raging Tomato. Justin says anyone pushing AI is either a fed or a complete moron. Sam Altman says AI will eventually destroy society, but we are not there yet. Either of you have a quick thought to add into that?
What about cancer research? Is every single person using AI for cancer research or protein folding? Are they a complete idiot or a fed? And just to tack on there, I also believe that AI will eventually destroy society and humanity as a whole. I don't disagree with that, but I feel like we have the luxury of living in this tiny little blip in history before that happens. We're the first and the last ones to maybe get some benefit out of it. So why not extract as much value as we can before it basically melts us all into bone paste to be reassembled by like nanobots into like war weapons?
Fair enough. MC?
You know, that what he said. I don't think that is. I actually don't think it's going to destroy, but I could be wrong. I don't hold that position
Animatrix
strongly.
too many times.
Fair enough. Tom Carpenter says with a big fat red dono tomatoes in the chat. You all know it's my favorite color here on screen. He says, Tom told me to tell y'all to send Sarah to #Vegas already and something about a goal. Yes. Every dono that you send tonight, please be sure you write in #Vegas. We are going next week? We're going to go moderate over on a big 1 million subscriber channel, and we're going to have some fun along the way with lots of IRL content coming to you. So super excited. Keep hitting the dono goal so that we can get Mater Nation out there loud and proud. Andy, my favorite philosopher of all time, says, when you say AI solves the 2 sigma problem, you're reducing education to technology, information transfer alone. Is that what really education is?
The 2 sigma problem is just that if you have a 1-to-1 assignment of tutor to student, then that outperforms one student in a classroom where they have to vie for the attention of the teacher. Like that's just an objective way that all public education works now. Even if you only have 5 people in the room, if one person needs help, the other 4 are not getting the active attention. So all the 2 sigma problem is that if you can give personalized tutor instruction to each person, then they will learn more. So it's not just reducing it down to is that really what education is? I'd say education, yeah. I mean, one person can sit down with a book and learn something from it without any teacher around. Technically, that is education, right? You can read a book and learn. So, I mean, the education as a word, I think, is maybe too broad or too vague to start determining whether or not the 2 sigma problem is an oversimplification or not. And really quick to correct you, Sarah, that last message, it didn't say goal. It said go.
Thank you. And to you, MC, any thoughts here?
I'm not super familiar with that particular topic. So
Isn't Sigma, does that come from like project management? Like, that's where I'm thinking of Sigma. Am I in the same realm?
I gotta imagine that's not, because that's what it sounds like to me.
This was Benjamin Bloom. Benjamin Bloom is the one that had the 2 sigma problem.
Who is Benjamin Bloom?
If you want extra credit, you can go and look up Benjamin Bloom's 2 sigma problem.
That didn't help knowing whether or not that has to do with project management.
Right? Because that was that's where I was going, because the what is it, P whatever it is.
Well, to be clear, Benjamin Bloom was a American educational psychologist. So that clears up anything. This 2 sigma problem was specifically talking about education. It wasn't about if IBM can train their people up faster by assigning more like senior level devs to their junior level. This was specifically about teaching.
Okay. Aunt got me backstage. He said Sigma 6. That's what I was thinking of with project management. Tom Carpenter says with the big 50 sitting here for my first time thinking, why in the heck ain't these folks hitting the goal, and figured I better move it on up. He's going to move it on up. Yes, he did. And you guys have officially hit your freaking goal. JD comes to the final 50, says hashtag Vegas. Hell yes. And remember, for every hashtag Vegas, Mr. Tom Carpenter will match all the way up to the first 1,000 for this Vegas trip. So keep it going. It's for a good purpose, ladies and gentlemen. And I got geared out. I got shirts with scanner tags on them. I got a book bag with the scanner. We're all ready for Vegas. Shout out to you. All right. And I had one final thought to you, Paranoid, because, and then I'll bring on our panel. They're all backstage. You mentioned how the teachers burn out after the first 4 years, right? And typically they turn over. Well, the burnout comes not from teaching, but from dealing with all of the other bullshit, right? The dealing with the kids are fighting. There's some crazy ones in there. There's some specialty cases going on. They're tired. They're this or that. But you are actually taking out the main piece that the teachers got into teaching to do. Like, they want to teach, they want to help students learn something, and you're putting them in the very thing that actually burns them out anyways. So not only will you be turning over what MC said is the technology, but then you'd also still be turning over these teachers' aides of some sort as well, because they would still be experiencing the very thing that causes them burnout without the reward of teaching and watching the light bulbs go off for the children, right?
I don't see it that way, because again, it's the imagine it this way, that you wanted to go and work at Walmart and you really wanted to be a cashier, and they were like, sorry, you're going to be the greeter, right? You might get burnout because you showed up thinking you were going to get this one job, and now you have to do a completely different job. So this analogy isn't that you get rid of the teacher and now you force the teacher to do the thing they hated the most. I'm saying you get rid of the teacher entirely. They're unemployed. They go back home. They're watching soaps during the day. And instead you bring people in that want to do the part that the teachers hate. They want to have the personal connection with the kids. Maybe they want to do some of the discipline, maybe make sure that they aren't crazy for that. But it's more about hiring people that want to do the job that you're hiring for, and not trying to swindle someone into a job of like, you're going to be a teacher, you're going to change these kids' lives. Oh, and by the way, you're really just going to be a glorified babysitter that gets yelled at by parents all day and you're going to hate it. You might be able to say like, hey, we've got a position open. Do you like to get yelled at by parents? Do you like to discipline problem children? Maybe no one applies to that, but at the very least, you're not hiring someone that's capable of so much more and then completely stunting them and tying their hands behind their back. So in my mind, it still solves the problem. It doesn't work out better for the teachers, because now the teachers are like, oh, I hate all the classroom management stuff. Thank you for bringing people in to do that for me. And you're like, well, actually, this is your last day too. We don't need you at all because you don't like the stuff that we need.
And I'll add in one fun fact. They actually have teachers' aides that come in, at least at our schools here. We are out in the county. I feel like we might be a little more spoiled here, but for every one teacher, there are 2 aides that run in and out between the classrooms and help during all of these teaching sessions and so on and so forth to help assist with that. So that problem has already been resolved. And now you're just replacing the teacher with AI in your aspect. And shout out to 5 Leaf Clover giving out 5 Paranoid American memberships. All right, gentlemen, are you ready to meet your panel?
Can I answer one other question that came up when we were talking way earlier? Someone said, Who do you sue when AI goes wrong?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, the school board, same as you would now. There's the answer.
The what? The school board?
You'd still sue the school. If something goes wrong inside of a school, when there's a human teacher involved, you sue the school. If something goes wrong when AI is happening in the school, you sue the school. I mean,
and then who does the school fire?
Well, it depends on what went wrong in the AI. Did it touch somebody inappropriately, or
no,
did
it taught that the mustache man was the good guy? Who do you fire then?
Is this a homeschool situation?
No, none of this was the debate. It was about homeschool, really.
So this is
a public school.
If the AI starts teaching that the mustache man was a good thing, then if this is open source, then this can be audited by the entire country. And it is basically a national problem, not a localized, this happened in one little podunk school and therefore doesn't get resolved.
But your proposal was that each individual school curates their own information too.
Well, it was
back and forth. Which way is it?
That's the potential. The potential is that each school could curate their individual lesson plans they want to. But for example, Common Core is no longer a national standard. But if there were a Common Core style initiative, now there's like a national lesson plan, right? A national curriculum. So it wouldn't necessarily be individualized. The point is that AI makes the possibility for either. It can be either hyper focused on that teacher and that class and that student, or it can be this is for everyone across the entire nation.
Okay, so now you go and you fix it, you put the guardrails on so it doesn't teach that mustache man was good, but now next semester it teaches that Pol Pot was good. You didn't think to put the guardrails on for that one yet, and there's a never-ending list of things that you aren't going to necessarily know because the AI doesn't have the moral compass to know, you know what, I should not be teaching that's the good thing.
Counterpoint, the exact same criticism exists for human teachers as well.
Can fire those teachers and you can say, no, you're
then
not
we get
do
curriculums. Then we get curriculums, right? And oh goodness. All right, let's get our panelists up here. We're gonna have some big fun with who's all back there. Let's go, gentlemen.
He knows he get crushed.
All right, MC's over there talking shit. That's what he's doing.
Oh, I'm talking to my chat.
Caught.
I muted your music. I didn't know if it was copyrighted or not, so
No, I wouldn't do that to you. I wouldn't do that to you, MC. Come on now.
I just don't know.
They just missed out on all that badass music that everyone backstage dances to and like rocks out to back there, and you just took that away from your audience.
I don't know. The angry American was dancing. I
wouldn't deprive my audience of any of the information or the entertainment that we provide here. So maybe you should leave MC Toon's channel and come over to the Paranoid American channel. Uncensored, unedited.
I love you both so much. It's hilarious. This has been a fun night, has it not? All right. So Dale was backstage, so he's going to go up first. And ladies and gentlemen, the rules of open panel Q&A, if you are new here, I don't think anyone is, but we are going to go in a round robin fashion. That means one at a time, one person gets to ask a question or two, get a little bit of back and forth between either or both of our panelists. That means everyone else on the panel is muted and quiet and not interrupting the person's turn so that they can have their time with the panelists. Now, if you want the crazy, you want the gauntlet, you have purchased it. It is on board and ready for kicking. So once we get through the open panel Q&A, we will move into full gauntlet mode, which is open mic, open floor, still in some form of respect, but we'll get there when we get there. So you are all going to still have some fun. Dale, would you like to ask your question or comment, sir?
Well, hey, Miss Sarah, I'm glad to be here. I ain't never been on nothing like this before. I talked to my brother Tom. He told me about y'all, and I figured I'd come in here. He said, you know that Miss Sarah, she's a pretty little thing, and she's smart as a whipper too. And I got to tell you, one of them's true. And here's the thing. Here's what I want to say. I think Mr. Paranoid American over there, he ain't got things figured out, because Where I grew up down there in the hollers of West Virginia, I mean, we had all kinds of things we had to deal with. You know, well, one time I had this dog named Danny. You know, when they asked you about your first pet's name, that's Danny. That's my pet. And he'd wander off in the woods, went running around all the time. He went out in the woods one time and was gone for over a week. And then my brother and I was looking out the window in the shack we lived in. That's because that's where we lived. You know, we lived in the shack. And so I was looking out that window and I saw that dog coming down the road. And my brother went running out there to get him, and he picked him up because he was hobbling as he's coming down the road. And when he got him back to the house, we noticed his paw's gone. And I don't mean his daddy. I mean his paw. And so we figured he must have got caught in a trap somewhere. You know, they got a lot of them fox traps out there. They put that fox urine out to lure them fox in. And that's what made me think of this story, because that's kind of what Paranoid American did here tonight. He put that fox urine out and lured us all in there with the big prompt, and then he scaled it all back so it was something he could support. But here's the thing. The issue is that he came back and we went hunting in them woods. We went looking around till we found that fox trap. And we found his paw. Figured that's what it was. He chewed himself out of there, you see. But here's the thing. My daddy, we had a farm up on the hill. And on that farm, we had grown all the crops that we'd eat. And them deer's coming in there and eating our food. And they kept coming in there and eating our food. They had the whole freaking woods to eat, but they come and eat our food. And so my daddy took Danny up there and he chained him up to a tree. And after he did that, my brother went up the next morning so he could feed him his dog food. And, you know, he came running down that hill. He was screaming and hollering. We didn't know what in the world he was talking about, but he's just yelling. We had no idea what was going on. But he come down that hill, and we finally got out of him. He said, Daddy's dead. We went up there, and sure enough, he was laying there on the ground. Turned out what happened is that tree my dad chained him up to got hit by lightning that night. And Danny got electrified. Well, what's the moral of this story? Moral of this story, you can chew your foot out of a trap, but the lightning's still coming for you. It's still coming for you. You ain't going to escape. So here's the light in Paranoid American. I got to ask you a question. Simple question. Do LLMs even know anything?
I think you'd have to define what you mean by know. But if we're talking about could it hold a conversation as well as a human, I believe so. You can have a conversation with it. Now, if you want to get some true insight, some creative new thoughts that maybe you never heard before, then it becomes a little bit harder to debate. But I think that we are far beyond the Turing test, which is whether or not I can tell I'm talking to a human person right now. I think we've blown beyond that. So yeah, I mean, an LLM can know something in terms of that you can ask it questions and have a full conversation about it.
Well, you know, those of us back here in the holler of West Virginia, we don't put no clout in that Turing test. That Turing test, crazy old thing, just saying, oh, does it feel like a human to you? Well, my goodness, a dog can feel like a human to you when it comes up and licks you, especially if it licks you in the right spot. But anyway, the point is that when you're trying to figure out if an LLM actually knows anything, you got to ask what's in the LLM. Do you even know what's in an LLM? Do you know what's in it?
Mostly it's mathematical weights that determine the next probabilistic action based on input and output, and there's
but ain't no words in there.
There are not words in there. It's usually mostly numbers, correct?
It's bunch of, there's like this, you know, freaking token dictionary out here, and then there's these embeddings that are in there and all that stuff, and then they do this high vector mapping thingamajigger. And then what they end up with is they get this whole big neural network, they call it, because they trying to model it after a human brain, right? We got our neurons and we got our synapses between our neurons. And so they try to figure out how to model all that stuff together, and they try to make it look like you and like me. But thankfully, I think they'll make it look more like me than like you, because that way they'll have a few more neurons. But the point is that the reality of these LLMs is they don't know anything. But the worst thing is, and I don't think most people have even realized this. I haven't heard y'all hit on it all night long. LLMs don't even know they don't know. And that's one of the most amazing things as humans that we have. We have the ability to instantly know that we don't know. For example, if I ask you right now, what was the name of my second dog? Your immediate response is, I don't know. But an AI would say, well, given the context of this conversation, I'd assume your dog was probably named something like Hobart. Just hallucinates it and makes it up, because an AI don't know how to say I don't know. And they still don't today. These ones that you say so highfalutin and good, they still don't know how to say I don't know. We got to put harnesses around them things in order to rein them in, because otherwise they're going to go all crazy on us and hallucinate all day long. You agree with me? You know what I'm saying is true.
I want to thank Sarah for not putting me up against Dale. He would have absolutely wiped the floor with me versus what MC Toon was like an underhanded softball pitch at like a little league game. So
well, I respect that. I respect that. I just got to say one more thing, and then I'm going to pass it on, okay?
Dale, go ahead.
Just one more thing. I'm going to pass it on. And this is the last thing I want to say. I just want to say, here's my prediction to you, Paranoid American. AI is going to be ready to replace you before it's ready to replace teachers. And that's all I got to say. I'll pass it on.
Dale may or may not be an AI tech expert that we've hosted here before for an interview.
Dale, I can't tell you that you're actually right on 3 counts because I'm an artist, a musician, and a software engineer, and AI has replaced all 3 of those positions within the last 3 or 4 years. So you're not wrong.
Damn.
Yeah, that's what he's doing. He's trying to create more jobs for them, replace all those teachers with AIs, and then tech geeks like him and my brother, they can go in there and they can just take all of that stuff. You know, they got more work to do now because we fired all the teachers, so we got more computer people we need. That's what I'm saying right there. So.
Fair enough. Spin, are you passing on your turn, sir? All right, question to you.
So, Paranoid American, meet the angry American. All of the jobs that you are advocating for, or that you have seriously advocated for by a fictitious computer screen, what do you do with those people? The only thing that I could really come up with is let them be the security guards.
Do you mean the teachers that are now going to be unemployed?
Correct.
I guess I'm still an optimist at heart, by the way, which is why I'm a conspiracy theorist, because I always hope and expect the best, and then I find out the reality. But in my optimistic mind, the transition would be that good teachers can then become profitable tutors, where now all of a sudden they enter the market as free agents, and people that are willing to spend for a good teacher that can actually tutor a human being to tutor their human student, now they're able to do that. And that can even be scaled out where, again, high ideal optimism here, but you could become like an online teacher celebrity where people fly their kids out to be tutored by you, or you fly out to see them because you have a specific way of teaching that subject that just clicks with people. Because as many of us have had bad experience with teachers, I think at least we've all had at least 1 or 2, or hopefully more than just 3 great teachers. And those teachers, sometimes it's random, like in just some podunk town, you've got someone that taught math better than anyone that I've ever met in the rest of my life, including college, right? Now, all of a sudden, if you can give them wider exposure, they can be making far more money and be causing far more advancement in kids that actually care about it, not just people that happen to be geographically lucky and got them. So I don't think they just immediately are homeless. I think that they can actually elevate what they're doing. Now, it does eliminate all of the bum teachers, and I don't care what happens to them.
Mm-hmm. So then you would agree that a tutor is technically a teacher?
Yes, I would. I would agree that a tutor is a teacher. They are actively
okay. So why the fuck would you get rid of the teachers to substitute them with a teacher that essentially would be a draw on the American taxpayer, because the simple fact that not everybody can afford a tutor. So let me finish my rant for a second. So you're going to put the technology into a public school that can barely afford the bills to create another bill on top of another bill, then fire all the teachers to replace them with a teacher that people on a fixed income can't afford, which would become then a burden on the government or the local government, because the great United States says that all kids have to go to school. So now you are creating a bigger problem than solving the little problem. That's what you're advocating for. And very honestly, I don't believe that you even believe the shit that's coming out of your mouth. I believe your satire. I believe that you have this ideology that computers can do it better than a human being. And I'm telling you, when I went to paramedic school, a computer cannot teach me how to stick somebody with an IV. They can show you their ideology, if you will, and I'm using that word as a semantic, right? But there are proper ways to do things. So, and the other thing that I want to say to you, are you advocating for collegiate level courses to become AI and take the human factor out, other than somebody sitting in front of an iPad or what the fuck is it, the Android tablet or whatever, and just have somebody teaching what they get off the internet, because AI is internet based. I think you would agree with that.
So you got 5 different things that I'll respond to in short order here. First of all,
please do.
I'm incredibly sarcastic, and it's not always easy to tell if I'm being serious or not. For this one, I 100% am being serious. I do believe this with all my heart. I know that it would be incredibly experimental, but I do believe it. And if anything, it's less to do about satire and more about a chip on my shoulder about how horrible of an experience I had in public school, which would bring me to my next point in that, just to clarify, I am not advocating this for trade schools, for college level. If you went to paramedic school, this is and I also specify this was not like to replace a homeschooling, right? If you've already got a parent willing to do homeschooling, you don't just replace that out of principle. This is specifically about public schools where you've got one teacher and multiple students in each classroom. So, your paramedic school, I agree with you. You're not going to replace that with AI. About the money, I firmly do believe, even though I don't think we ever came to any sort of consensus, I fully believe, and I can, if we want to spend enough time on the math, this saves money. It does not spend money. You free up all of the different teacher salaries. You basically get that paid back in full the first year that you have a classroom worth of AI models. It's actually going to be hosted in somewhere else. It won't be like in the classroom itself. After the first year, now you're making money. You're saving another 3 to 4 years of teacher salary across the school board. So the money's already there. The technology's already there. This is not spending money that doesn't already exist. You mentioned the tutors. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Sarah, can I respond to just one of those things before I forget my thought?
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, so all the money you're claiming it can save, what I don't and what I haven't heard really is the cost of the maintenance, the upkeep. We know children are clumsy. I'm going with the what if. What if a child, granted, destroys the product, whether it be a tablet or whatever the semantic would be, right? There's cost to that. Then you have server, because I guarantee you they're not going to just connect that to the World Wide Web and you can look at whatever you want, right? So there's all of the other costs that would be absorbed by ultimately the federal government, which all I keep hearing on the internet and big box media is how much we're in debt. All of this, in my opinion, would be federally backed if it were to go like this, whether it's public school, private school, charter school, trade school, whatever, because as we know, these schools, whether it's public, private, charter, whatever, have some sort of government backing to keep them afloat, to educate our people. So the drain on having all this technology would outweigh the cost of having somebody making, for semantics, $60,000 for 6 to 7 months worth of school. And the other thing I want to comment on is when school gets out for the year, whether it be May, June, whatever, these teachers, they have their break. They have their, God, I don't have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, God forbid, and go teach a bunch of hellions for 6 hours. God forbid, right? The point is, cost of it, the cost is where the downfall to all this is going to be. The tech. Look, there's many tech firms out there that are trying to push this. I've seen it. I've done the research. I've done my homework. But feasibility, I don't think it's there now. And I did hear you say, let's put an ad up. Do you think Google is going to sponsor all this? Okay, yeah, they're going to sponsor it all, but they're going to make money off of it. They're going to put Roblox and Roblox ads because it's targeted. Wouldn't you agree?
Not necessarily, because the same way that Apple put a whole bunch of Apple 2GS in the school systems that I went to, and everyone grew up playing Carmen Sandiego, and they grew up playing Oregon Trail.
I did it. I did it in computer labs. Right?
For Apple, it was an advertisement for Broderbund. It was an advertisement for these companies, and it's not that you had to pay money. It's just that having that billboard in front of young, impressionable minds is something that corporations will be willing to spend money on, even if it's just, I want you familiar with this logo for OpenAI. If I can put an OpenAI logo in front of every kid for the next 12 years, there are companies that would spend money on that. I'm not saying that that's where this entire argument like operates around, but I'm saying that because there's a very clear objective precedent where the technology, Silicon Valley was like, here's millions or billions of dollars worth of free software and technology because we're trying to plant a seed so that you have brand loyalty when you're old enough to buy your own. That's the version of ad placement. It's not like, to get the answer to this question, insert, a $5 bill or whatever.
I get it. I'm just advocating there is more pieces that you did not hit on that would drive, in my opinion, the cost more than what it would cost to have the actual human interaction. I mean, go ahead.
I'll say I actually did have those considerations, but they're baked in because right now kids already do have Chromebooks. Schools already do have servers. They already do have IT tech admins.
Yeah.
So all of this will be, and the scenario.
And that was my next point. That was my next point.
Where a kid like breaks something. Well, these expensive servers would be on premises, but they would be in like a locked server room. So unless your fifth graders have unbridled access to the most expensive room in the entire
but wait a minute, you're advocating it to be in the classroom. The classroom has unbridled access to the equipment.
No, it is software access. So in the room, all of the computers, all the Chromebooks, these are just terminals that connect to the LLM model that's hosted elsewhere in the school in a place where kids don't have access to.
But I renew my argument, sir. They have
wrap it up, Spin.
Yes, ma'am. They have unbridled access to the terminal, which needs maintenance, which is going to need whatever else.
Already is the case. Kids right now across schools in the entire nation already have those terminals. They have Chromebooks that they have to bring to class. They break
them all the time.
Oh yeah, of course they break them on time. But you're not raising a new issue that would prevent AI from being a solution. You're just talking about a problem that already
I probably have about 2 minutes. So McLooney Toon over there, I just have one question. Okay, 30 seconds. I just have one question for you, McLooney Toon. You homeschool your child.
Yeah.
You use a computer, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, not much for the homeschooling.
Okay, so you're actually buying books and you're putting them in front of the said child, and you're saying figure it out.
No, it's more interactive than that.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
Thank you so much, Spin. Excellent line of questioning.
I want to answer just one of the last questions that comments he had, and that's
Dude's hogging the mic here.
I'm good at it. But that poor kids already don't get tutors, so that it's a non-issue that if the teacher leaves the classroom, well, now poor kids can't. They already can't get private tutors, so it's a
yes, at the government's expense. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You're inflating the cost, but you're not giving a solution of the cost. The cost for all of this bullshit is going to be 20 times higher than just paying a teacher to come into the classroom and teach the little snot-nosed bastards like we did. We're all adults here. Fuck all this bullshit. And you know what? Sarah, I'm done.
Thank you, Spin. I appreciate it. Vibe, let's move on to you, sir.
Yes, I used your word, Clay.
How you guys doing? Okay. Just enjoying some fresh.
Are you on the right mic, Vibe?
Uh-oh. Can you not hear me?
You sound like you're in a tin can or something.
Let's see. Headset Bose. Yeah, I'm in the Philippines right now, so I'm on jungle Wi-Fi.
Okay, so your shit just sucks. That's all. Go ahead, Vibe. Ask your question.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. I have to say, we'll have to get into it.
He's popping in and out for me, Sarah. Like in and out.
It's fine.
Sarah,
go ahead, ask your question, Vibe.
If you want to go to the next person, I'll switch over to these headphones and see if it's better.
No, just go. I think you're all right. Just go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely going to dig into Angry Man because I think he's got a lot of misconceptions on how all this stuff works. But to our panelists, starting with Paranoid here, you were mentioning this is something that we could do right away today. And based on the prompt, that would mean replacing teachers today with AI. And I mean, do you actually think that's possible, or without any restructure of the school, or do you think you have to redesign the whole school system and how the whole education program works? So, for example, if kids are now all of a sudden learning at their own pace, and there are some charter schools out there, they're doing 2-hour a day AI teaching sessions where it's just 2 hours. They're seeing a huge uptick in performance of students, but that is being reported by the schools, so I don't know how accurate that is. But in this particular example, kids can now move at a much faster pace than they were able to, especially when the curriculum is designed specifically for their learning habits, which means the grades almost become irrelevant, and the kids are all going to accelerate at different rates. So you're not going to be keeping the same kids together in the same groups as they accelerate through the programs with the same guides, right? You'd really have to restructure the whole grade system, everything, if everybody gets to learn at this pace. And how would you solve that? Or do you think this is going to be an incremental change where we start with cameras in there that's feeding to a teacher, and it's just reading the student's attention, saying, I can see in the eyes of this student, he doesn't understand. I can see in the eyes of this one, he's bored. I can see in the eyes of this one, which we can currently do right now. That these will be incremental steps that over a decade will gradually keep on adding more and more AI in there until teachers get replaced with guides, which would be more psychological and play development people. How would you see that whole transition, or do you actually think it could happen today?
I do think that would be incremental, and it'll probably be the same way that, as a loose example, but there are some people that just do menial tasks, and part of the new job is they'll wear a camera and a microphone that records what they're doing so that they can feed some neural network, and on a long enough timeline, that neural network discovers what that job entails and just kind of slowly takes it over, the same way that you would hand off a job to a new incoming person as you're leaving another job. I want to clarify, when I said that we could do this today, that was a direct response to MC Toon. Basically, I think he was implying that we don't have LLMs that are good enough that would be up to the task to teach a kid about a certain subject and quiz them and do all of that, and that it was like some hypothetical future model that might be better in the future. I'm saying that right now, today, June 2026, we have a localized model that you could download and host by yourself that would be able to solve this issue. Now, the actual like infrastructure and how the lesson plans work and who goes to what classroom, all of that would absolutely be incremental. I'm not saying you turnkey, fire all the teachers, you show up on a Tuesday, and now there's a computer where the teacher used to be. That's not this. It's just that the models exist that could have the educational value that the teacher has.
Okay. Yeah, and I was going to say, like, I think it's just a whole restructuring of the whole educational system if we were to replace teachers today, right? It's just not. It's
The
not
original
feasible.
method was basically church-based and community-based, where all of the kids in a certain town would all go to one big room with one teacher, where you've got, like 16-year-olds learning again next to 11 and 12-year-olds. And in those scenarios, they also kind of self-segregated into like, here's the fast ones and here's the slow ones, and they would learn at their paces and that sort of a less structured way. But it's not that these drastic changes to how the education system hasn't already happened and we can't weather the storm. And in fact, I think when they introduced like some of the public education guidelines from like the 1970s, you've seen an objective trajectory where things are getting worse and they haven't gotten better since then. So even if you were to disagree with any of these takes, status quo and doing what we're already doing is already proven to be a losing formula. So something experimental has to change. There has to be some sort of upset in the way the school system works, regardless of what that change is.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that we're going to see it not in the magnet schools, but in the charter schools and the private schools, where they incrementally expand this. And if it works, then we'll see. By then, the price is going to come down, and it'll start expanding into the private schools, whether we like it or not. It's really, how do we govern it and how do we move forward? Now, given that, like Toon, you sounded like, this is something you would not want to see. But you guys did kind of concede or come together on the idea, like, let's say we went through these incremental changes. Would you be comfortable with actually giving the teacher role to AI, but actually having maybe a dedicated, as I said, guide that was more trained in psychology and play behavior and social behavior, that basically guides the kids through like 2-hour sprints or 1-hour sprints, taking them apart from that and then working as a group together to go through those sessions, where the majority of the teaching is actually being taught by a guided system, but you have somebody that's less in the education sphere, but more in the social and play sphere of the teacher role, because we still need role models, right? We need somebody to look up to and say, I want to behave like that. And each of us had a different teacher that we probably saw, or a coach or somebody like that, where we said, I like the behavior of that person, I'm going to start modeling myself. And we might all have different people, right? If we replace these type of roles with like janitors and security guards, I mean, maybe they're a good role model, but maybe that's not the role models we want. Would that be something in the future, Toon, you would be comfortable with moving into a primarily AI teaching role, but with very strong social guides?
Well, I won't take an absolutist position. So I'll say, if it was found that was a successful system, then sway me with the evidence about how well that worked. But as the prompt, no, I don't think that's the case here. I don't think that's going to happen. And no, I guess not. In general, no. But present the evidence to me and sway me with that. And everything's, of course, has to be at this moment, has to be hypothetical.
Okay.
All right, I'll give it to the next person, Sarah, and I'll change my headset while we're doing that and see if that works better.
Thank you so much, Vibe. We appreciate you. And to you, sir, question, comment? It always takes him a second. 5, 4.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I wanted to touch back on something that Dale brought up, but kind of seemed to have gotten skipped over. Maybe I just didn't hear the answer. But first, I want to understand correctly, you believe that AI would mean teachers wouldn't have to actually know the subjects being taught in the classroom, correct?
Correct.
I have to strongly disagree. With the tendency for LLMs to hallucinate, young students are too naive of what they're learning to spot these hallucinations. This would be something the teacher has to be able to step in and intercede with. When it detects the LLM producing these hallucinatory results, the teacher can step in and correct the LLM.
So hallucinations are absolutely real. There's no debating that. All of us right now could prove that AI will hallucinate. However, a lot of these hallucinations can be mitigated very easily using a number of techniques. Retrieval augmented system is one, the RAG. Another one is just setting a temperature. But let me give you a human example as to how static this can be. And again, this is personal anecdote experience, but I remember I had a specific, I think it was like a science teacher. The entire science class, like every single day, aside from labs that we were self-guided labs that we did with a team and not with a teacher intervening, the entire classroom consisted of showing up, and he had an overhead projector where he had written in cursive notes from like 12 years ago, and we would just sit down and just write down his notes verbatim, and you would go home and you would just read them over and over again and memorize them, and then show up on every other Friday and take a test, and that would be a Scantron test, and that was it. So in that scenario, we had no feedback from that teacher, no interactivity, that he didn't even have an option to hallucinate for us, because he would just be like, write down what's on the overhead projector. So in that scenario, we can definitely make an LLM so stupid and so strict and static that it would do the exact same job as that science teacher. But it also has the ability to turn that temperature up. Temperature meaning, I think, a vague way of describing that would be like how much randomness or how much creativity you're allowing the LLM to have. So you can turn that temperature all the way down so it becomes more deterministic, meaning less hallucinations, all the way to the point where it can just spit out a script the same way that a human teacher would. So I would almost argue that you can match that static approach that my science teacher example, but you also have the ability to sort of tweak it and get it to be a little bit more open and more flexible while mitigating those hallucinations. Like in a properly trained system, you can mitigate a large majority of those.
You don't mitigate hallucinations by restricting information, because part of the problem that causes them is that it has low fidelity or low confidence information to begin with. And then it's trying to piece something together confidently based off of that. That's the problem. And that's not solved by taking information out. You actually need more information in so that it doesn't have to choose from those low confidence tokens.
If we're talking about an open-ended LLM where a kid can ask anything on any subject, yeah. But if we're talking about like this month's lesson is going to be on 14th century sort of like Europe, then you can absolutely have an LLM that is so laser focused with RAG materials that it won't eliminate 100%, but it will greatly reduce the chance of a hallucination if the questions are all oriented about the very thing that it was trained on. I agree. Like if you start asking it math questions and theoretical physics, yeah, it'll just make stuff up and hallucinate.
You don't even have to go that far. Like the top models still struggle with topics of law and research. They can go from 17 to 80% hallucination rates on those topics. That's not something I would trust to be, not have a teacher overseeing. So I'm saying.
Are you talking about top models that are specifically fine-tuned in legal precedent, or are you talking about top model like the latest Opus or the latest generalized like Codex or GPT?
I can look up the list of the models they're referring to.
Well, because I guess the main question here is, are we talking about a model that was specifically trained on, and so that it is an expert on like legal matters for lawyers, or that you can open up one of these generalized AI LLMs and ask it a legal question, and then that'll hallucinate?
It didn't specify, but I assume they're general models. would be
So
my
in
guess.
that case, less information actually would help a little bit. But it's in the context, right? Because these general models, they're supposed to be like you can ask it any question, and I think that's really the problem. If you
Well, no, because things like
hyper-focus
Cornell
one
are going to come through as like high confidence versus some website that it doesn't know anything about, or maybe it's just a scanned in PDF from a legal book, right? It's still gonna do fine even with the lower confidence information with high confidence sources if it's available.
I agree. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just think the solution.
It'll be able to tell a better difference because it can go, oh, this is low confidence, and this over here is matching the low confidence more than the high confidence, and determine that's probably bad information. Like more information is always better than less.
Well, more information within the context that you're curious in. If you feed it a whole bunch of like 1980s music trivia, that might not help you on your math test. Or math might be the wrong example for an LLM, but it might not help you on your history test.
No, I'm not suggesting it would. But you also have to understand too, the other problem. Kids are smart, they're clever, and they hate authority. They're going to, and it's well known that you can jailbreak LLMs. That's not going to be very long until children figure out how to jailbreak whatever LLM the school's using to produce all kinds of crazy and wild content.
I would argue that would be a net positive. That actually means that now there's emergent learning occurring where they're developing valuable skills that are relevant in the real world in real time. That's something that you might not get out of your social studies class.
Or it's just something they read off the internet.
I mean, even so, I feel like they're demonstrating an actual usable skill. So if the worst thing that happens is kids learn how to jailbreak LLMs, that's great. That's actually better than I would expect out of a typical public educated school kid right now.
Well, they already do that though. They already, I mean, Napster, for Pete's sake, when we were kids in our age group, like we had Napster, we figured out how to even cheat codes. Like we figured all of this stuff out already. We were there without AI.
Anyways, I thank you for your time. Sarah, I guess you can move on. I can save the rest for the panel.
That was a good question. Clay,
great question. Thank you,
sir.
All right, very good. Thank you, Paranoid American and MC Toon, for being here. Thank you, Sarah, for hosting, as always. Forgive me, I do want to ask something particular to someone who wasn't able to be here. And I just want to go down the train of thought on it, just to kind of get your take on it, Paranoid. Primarily, it seems that money seems to be the issue. I want you to touch on that a little bit, but before you do that, I also want to hear a little bit about your experience within the education system as well. But then after you tell us a little bit about that, if you could, with the financial stuff, I guess the best way to do this is to kind of go through it. Kind of wondering, like, if you take away the funding for the teachers, essentially now you've gotten rid of that's kind of like a social safety net, right? So that we have the ability to teach the children. Now you've taken that funding completely away, right? And if you do that, then that's gone, okay? But then comes the question, if it's burdensome to have all of these teachers monetarily, right? It seems more as a criticism of the whole system, right? So you're talking about administration, and the compromise of the educational outcomes, that monetary thing, right? So taking all that funding away, that's kind of general, right? But then you're proposing a solution. And if you're proposing that solution, it seems more that you are just more or less attacking the education system on a whole politically, as opposed to really focusing why it is that these things are happening. Now, me personally, like I said, this is somebody else's thoughts on this. I don't care about the money. I want you to spend as much money as possible if it gets the right results, personally. But it does seem as though the money seems to be the issue in this, and it seems that it's more aligned with perhaps some personal vendetta that you might have against the teachers and what they're capable of doing versus the actual money.
Great observations. I would say I also don't care about the budget. I think that we've shown, first of all, we've shown we're willing to spend more on education than any other country in the world, right? But based on ratio to GDP. So we're already spending more than anybody else. And like you, if we have to double that, triple that, quadruple that, I'm enough of a conspiracy theorist. I really do think that someone, the government's just like turn the money printer on and it's just printing out money, and now we have the money. Like, let future generations deal with the inflation that it causes. But to me, it is a non-issue. So I don't see that any of this is bound from budget reasons. I'm obviously happy to entertain that discussion because it's a very real issue that usually holds things back. But let's just say that's not an issue. There is a very real issue with scale. You just won't have enough human beings willing to go and do one-to-one teaching, teacher to student, by throwing money at it. Even if you had the money to do that, there isn't the amount of human beings that are willing to do that. And the only way that you could entice them is that you'd have to start spending way more than 60 grand a year. You'd probably have to up that to like 150, 200 plus. I mean, we're just guessing at that point. That becomes completely economically unviable. On the other hand, I think that the approach to replace the teachers, let's say an average school has like 30, 32 teachers. If each of those is making $60,000 a year, I think that was the average that we brought up earlier, that's roughly $2 million a year in salary just for the teachers alone. That's not including the administration and the janitors and the lunch ladies. All of them get to keep their jobs, right? So now you have $2 million to basically stage a local AI system. And if it doesn't break every single year, which it absolutely shouldn't, then if that lasts for 3 or 4 years, well, now cumulatively over the course of 4 years, that's $8 million that you have to invest. And it keeps growing. It keeps getting faster. It keeps getting better. So I don't even think the budget is an issue once you actually start doing the numbers. But again, I think it's a moot point because I don't care how much we spend. I would rather dump all the money we can and get this problem solved, to get smarter kids and a smarter younger generation that can like lift the country up.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I apologize. My camera went out just as we were doing our Q&A, so I apologize for that. I like to give my reactions real time, but no, I hope I did justice for that. I think that the concern here mostly is, like I was saying, for him, the concern is perhaps that you don't feel that these teachers are doing a very good job, so you want to replace them, but then perhaps maybe that AI isn't the best solution. Maybe, and this is just my personal feelings, better teachers, obviously, that's obviously going to be a question. But then also he was wondering your kind of expertise. What is your field behind education?
I mean, I feel like everyone here is probably qualified to speak on it because we've all gone through at least a decade of education, whether private, public, or other. Some of us, if we went to college, it may be even closer to 2 decades worth. So I think that's enough. If you need more credentials than that, I also was a subject matter expert and a learning course designer for all sorts of Fortune 500 companies. I designed the educational training system for Hillrom beds, which are incredibly complex beds that if you've ever been to hospice or a hospital, they're the little bed, the automated beds that like turn you around and make sure you don't get bed sores. They literally have like 80 buttons on them. And if the nurses don't understand how to use them, somebody can actually die. So I didn't work in education system, but I absolutely have been working in education, e-learning. And my mom growing up was an English teacher in public school and college and did tutoring. So I come from a family of, teachers. She would not be happy with my approach on this subject either.
I bet. Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you gave that as well. I know that was his curiosity. But actually that kind of goes into a little bit of my curiosity too, because I'm wondering when it comes to the teachers themselves, right? I don't look at the actual like curriculum as the bigger cost. The bigger cost is the child care, right? So these children are being educated. Sure, the curriculum is there, but the individual person, each one of them, has to have someone who can direct them in the right direction. I mean, these concepts go into morality and ethics and things like that. And I don't see how, even though AI can teach what ethics are or what morals are, they can't teach why ethics exist in real time. Like that really does require a human experience, right? And so when I'm looking at that, I'm kind of wondering, like, not just when they're teaching and when they're doing the thing, but also like the vetting for the employment of, right? So if you have a policing of the classroom, just because it's, it's already being taught and all of a sudden now all you've got is a babysitter in there, the child care is the focus at that point. And yes, teachers are doing child care essentially, but they also are serving, right? So teaching actually is a service. All teachers are required to sign an oath in this country. This is actually a requirement. All service members of the public domain are required to sign an oath. And so AI can't do that. So the only other option in service would be a policing, right? Or child care, things like that. So that service, then you're essentially handing it over not to someone who's completely integrated with the system and why it's happening, but you're actually handing it over just to essentially a babysitter, no longer interested in why they're being taught.
I see that. I guess my counter to that would just be, I would entrust a human teacher to teach ethics, and I don't care if they signed an oath. That doesn't mean that they're going to uphold that oath. They're humans. They're full of flaws. So it's almost a complete wash to me. Like, sure, yeah, an LLM can't agree to an oath. A human can, but they can lie to it, or a human can, and then they can, over a period of 5-10 years, start to get a little bit more and more comfortable, start to get a little bit more flexible with what they consider in and out of that oath. So, I mean, we're not living in a vacuum with like automatons. These are real people with problems.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I want to ask MC Toon one question as well. When it comes to the idea that we just don't know what could happen, right, in this scenario, that from my perspective isn't always the best perspective to have. Just because I don't know what's going to happen doesn't mean I shouldn't necessarily integrate, right? And I think you actually answered the question of integration. You're not really opposed to integration. You just want the right type of integration, perhaps. And I think that's accurate. I see you shaking your head. Yeah. But then, would you agree that data storage is cheaper than labor?
Generally, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. That's really all I got for you, brother.
We use that concept at work all the time, right? We can go and optimize some code to be more efficient, or for a lot less time, we can go and cache something in that takes an extra amount of memory. Like, well, yeah, that's a lot cheaper.
So there is that recognition that it just seems to be a better option when it comes to simply data storage, right? I can carry around a 12-pound book, or I can carry around, a 12-pound laptop, and one of them is going to be able to store way more data than the other, right? But just to kind of switch back, and I'm going to just give a couple more quick questions to Paranoid. Can you explain red teaming a little bit? And then also, I want you to, when it comes to the particular subjects of, like, you got the mathematics, sciences, the history, and the languages, can you explain to us why it is that, particularly with languages and sciences, I actually consider sciences part of the arts as well, why those are more difficult to have a computer model teach it? I know that you are for the AI, but can you explain why it's actually more difficult for the AI to teach it? And that's kind of why I want you to, if you could, explain red teaming a little bit.
So I'm not familiar with the concept of red teaming, but I can, at a very high level, talk about why LLMs aren't well suited for math and science. But do you want to define what red teaming is for me?
Red teaming is the idea that you can. It's essentially like a security protocol where it's like testing the AI to see how far it'll break before it'll break. You know, how far it'll bend before it'll break, and then going back and then fixing that coding.
Okay.
The red team is the attack team. The blue team is the protection team.
Tom, you know the rules here.
Okay. No, thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. You made a huge difference, and because I actually just kind of looked it up, and that's why I was asking him. But no, I appreciate that because it was it. So there's two teams technically.
So just to clarify, and I guess Tom, you're allowed to answer this too, in case you know the answer.
If it's okay with Sarah.
He is the expert. I think we should actually allow him to provide the correctness.
If I were to oversimplify and come up with an analogy that I'm more familiar with, would this mean that like red teaming is sort of like pen testing AI in a way? Okay, I got a thumbs up. So okay, I'm familiar with the concept of penetration testing. So again, I'm not the expert on this specific topic, but my belief is that LLMs are not well suited for math or science in isolation because an LLM is a language model. It's good at predicting the next word or the next letter that's going to be said, but it's entirely based on whatever it was trained on. So it's not doing math. It's not doing science. It's just pulling up, here's the next logical thing that I would say if I were saying all these previous things based on all this other context. However, LLMs do have the ability, when they're part of these larger systems, to identify, oh, this is a math question. Oh, this is a science question. For example, if you were to ask a math question to Claude Code or to Codex from OpenAI or Gemini Code or any of these other like code specific, you ask it a math question, more times than not, it's going to write a computer script and then it's going to run, the variables through that script where the math is actually happening in code. So it's no longer leveraging the language model to do the math. It's actually creating code. The code does the math, and then it verifies like the logic in the code. And you could extrapolate that to a slightly more abstract degree to science, where now it can actually write like an entire Python script and then determine what the answer to the science question is. Those are also prone to hallucination, but that's why LLMs are not good at math and science, but they can call on other agents that then call agentic tools, which are good at those things.
Very good. And then I would actually like to be able to hear MC Toon's opinion on that as well, because when we're talking about the mathematics, the sciences, the arts, the languages, as I was mentioning, these things are very difficult, and I hear your version of why it's difficult to teach these things. I want to hear MC Toon's opinion on this, why it's more difficult than just say like history. And actually mathematics, the interesting thing about mathematics is that it does change over time, but very, very, very little. And there's a reason for that as well. But specifically, like this question is about the arts and why the arts are more difficult to teach.
All right.
Art is subjective instead of objective in general. Math, K through 12 math, how much has it changed since, 50 years ago? Not a lot. It's the same topics. It's university level stuff, but I just wanted to put that in. So yeah, history is one thing, right? It's not really just, this happened and this happened and this happened in this year. There are these links that happen. What was the cause, the trigger of World War I? That's not a fact. That's something you when you're teaching history, you're teaching that these things happened and drawing those links. And AI is okay at drawing those links. And right, that's the neural net part of it. It's fine at that. But when you're doing things that's more subjective, art, right? It can imitate art because it's seen art, and then it can go and synthesize art and say, okay, well, here's what I've seen, and let me mix them together and give it to you. It's not from what I've never seen, and I can't say this, completely, but I've never seen an AI generate something that it hasn't somehow been fed in some way in a combination. It's not doing new stuff. It's not avant-garde like, that band that's not like any other band that you've ever heard before. That band, they suck.
Yeah,
I've heard them. Everybody's heard that band. They suck. Anyway, it's not like that. It's I don't know. That's all I got.
No, I like it, and I'll go ahead and pass it off. I would say that art is difficult to teach because it's very difficult to teach what is beautiful and what is ugly. Those things AI just simply does not recognize.
So, and just I want to tack onto that too, that technically when it's generating art, that's no longer an LLM. Those are usually diffusion models and a million other ones too. And also the statement that math hasn't changed in the last 50 years. I can find nitpicky examples. Like, for example, I believe the definition of a trapezoid changed at one point from a shape that has exactly one pair of parallel sides, and then eventually gets redefined as at least one pair of parallel sides. I know it's not the strongest example, but changes do happen even in K through 12 math. It's not all like high level, mathematics.
I agree.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Clay. For the win, you're up, sir. Have at it.
Thank you, Sarah. MC Toon, you've kind of gotten off a little easy here, so I'll start with you here. So I wanted to ask.
Thank you.
With homeschooling your children, how did that start? Did you have them in public school and then pulled them out, or what happened there?
I actually used some of my experience in one of my slides. So our first kid went to kindergarten and first grade, and in first grade, he would be given math homework, right? Here's your math sheet for the day. And he was behind on reading. So they'd give him the math sheet. And we put this together later. They'd give him the math sheet, and on the top of it was the instructions. Now, he was behind in reading. The math, they didn't figure this out. They didn't put it together. He was not doing the math. He was failing the math stuff or doing poorly in math. And I'm like, he's pretty good at math. He really isn't having problems with this first grade math stuff. Why is it so bad? Well, so then my wife is spending hours every day going over the math with him. But it was just that somebody needed to read to him the instructions, and he wasn't doing it because the pace for reading wasn't what he needed. So he's good at math. He was getting bad grades at math, and it took a human, my wife, not the teacher, not impressed myself. I wasn't impressed with that. My wife, to figure that out. An LLM would never figure that out. He's getting bad grades at math. Well, he put him in a slower math, pace. Anyway, that was first grade. At the end of first grade, my wife's like, this, we're struggling. This isn't going well. How about we homeschool for a year? Let's see how it goes. Get his reading up to par or whatever. And I'm like, oh yeah, all right, well, for a year, fine, whatever. Well, at the end of first year of homeschooling, which was second grade for him, he was reading for fun. I was buying him Redwall books. I got him in the end. I got like the entire Redwall book collection. He chewed them all up. The kid who couldn't read in first grade is behind in reading in first grade. By fourth grade, had read through all the entire Redwall series. And so after second grade, we're like, this really was good for him. He's fine at math. He's caught up on that. He gets it. He's way ahead in reading. So we kept going. And then we asked at each boundary, when you move to a different building, you get mixed up, you get jumbled up with different kids. And so you're not the new kid. So when you go from elementary school to middle school, everybody gets chucked together. So there's no new kids. And we're like, that's when you want to do the transition. If you're going to do it, that's a great time because you're not the new kid. So every one of those transitions that when our local school system had that, we're like, this would be the year if you really want to. What do you think? And every year, and all of our kids did this. They're like, no, this is it. So that's what it's been, and so that's our experience.
Very cool, very cool. So paranoid. You've talked a lot. We've hounded you a lot here tonight, so I'm going to do some extra hounding now here for you. So
I'm ready for it. I like it.
All right, cool.
It.
So with Ant, you had said this is what you expect out of your typical public school age kid. There's expectations that you've created in your mind as to what we're getting as our results. You have pointed to that I believe we're number one in the spending on education in this country. And I believe last time I checked, we're roughly around about 36th in results. That's horseshit. I'm going to drop this in the back chat here. This is a final from 1895 for 8th grade. And I shit you not, like these kids back then were taught very well, and they would wipe the floor easily with these kids. And they didn't have language models. They didn't have computers. They didn't have anything. They had instruction from a teacher and everything. And just hearing from MC Toon now, he brought up another great point, is that not all kids learn the exact same way. So now if we're going to pigeonhole our entire youth into this AI, for example, what are the results that we're going to get? Because so far, with having Chromebooks in the classroom and everything, these results are not what they used to be as well either. And also, I'll let you respond there first, and then I'll hound you more.
Well, I would push back on pigeonholing. I would say this is the exact opposite of pigeonholing. Right now, you're going to force optimistically 20 to 30 kids to learn from one teacher the way that that teacher decides that they want to teach. Their teaching method, their disciplinary method, just like the tonality of their voice, all of that, their pacing. All of those kids are essentially being pigeonholed into dealing with how that teacher teaches. Once you create AI as the instructional layer, now you can have 20 or 30 different variations teaching the exact same content, but catering it in 20 to 30 different ways, which is something that a human being simply doesn't have the time or capacity to scale. So I don't think it's pigeonholing. And I also would say that it's not fair to say like, oh, well, they've had Chromebooks and Chromebooks have led to not a huge improvement. I think that this is because the ultimate problem is the teacher. The teacher was the problem, and the Chromebooks didn't replace the teacher. The Chromebooks just replaced the books. That's all that they really.
They replaced the pen and paper as well now too.
Pen and paper and the book, yeah. And now no one can draw in cursive or write by hand anymore. And again, I'm not going to debate that 100 years ago education was stronger, tests were much more difficult. The norm might be that you spoke 3 or 4 different languages and you were multidisciplined. That's long gone.
And why is that? Why is that?
Can we just get to where a 7th grader can read at a 7th grade level? Once we can get back to that baseline, then we can talk about rewinding the clock to the 1800s where people were, multilingual.
Well, it's not about just being multilingual. I think it just starts simply with the building blocks, and that I think you're a fellow conspiracy theorist and such like that. There's been a complete dumbed downness of our country and everything. And I think it's done for a reason. This is why we are where we are. This is why we're getting 36 for results. And now you're substituting, well, now that we have these computers, let's just double down now and go full AI with everything. I think we're truly going in the wrong direction with everything, with all of that. We need to go back to the basics of things. And it starts with like MC Toon's kids where, if someone's not a good reader, well, get more direction in the right avenue with that from a teacher and such like that helped his son. So I went, go on.
Oh, to be clear, I just want to make sure I'm not misanthropic. I don't think that I want all teachers to be replaced because of a chip on my shoulder. I do have a chip on my shoulder, but that's not the reason. I don't think they should be replaced. I just think that it's literally just a scale problem. If in some wild scenario, we could afford to have a teacher for every single student in every single class, I would be more in favor of that than I ever would be in favor of putting AI in that role. I just don't think that we're ever going to live in that reality. So on a pragmatic standpoint, AI is the only real viable solution that fixes all these problems that have come up. Every other solution is really just like, well, let's just see if it gets better. Let's just raise salaries a little bit. Let's just do this and that. Like there are all these incremental small tweaks. But you just showed that, again, in like the 1800s, before we had the current version of schooling, everyone just kind of went to like the local church, the local community center. And I think part of the big reason, and this is conspiracy. They're dumbing us down. I didn't bring that approach because it would be harder to defend with all that extra baggage, but it's that.
But it's true.
The old forms of schooling was community based. You wanted your neighbors to be smart. You wanted your kids to be friends with the other kids in the community. You wanted like all of that to help your town out so that your town would become better. I think the way that school works now, everyone is so isolated that there's really no, like, the teacher's not thinking, I'm raising the children that are going to be the next wave in this community, therefore I've got this extra social obligation. They're like, oh my god, when is this class period end? I hate these freaking kids. So it's like a stark difference between the incentives of being a teacher in the 1850s versus the incentives of being a teacher in 2020.
Sure. So you brought up the Scantron. Fucking worst piece of shit ever. I agree with you. I was a shitty test taker myself and everything. I understood all the concepts and everything. And then when it came to take the test and everything, they would just tweak, like on math, like ever so slightly off from whatever your homework was. And you're like, what the fuck is this? They didn't teach me this shit. What the fuck? It was just bullshit. It just pissed me off and everything. And a lot of kids had that same problem with things. So it was just very frustrating. But I really do believe, like, I went to private school from preschool through third grade. And we learned like phonics, the building blocks, the true building blocks of everything. And I think it really starts there. And I'm just kind of sitting here thinking about things where, well, there are things that private schools are doing that we can just replicate in public schools. Why do we have to have more money being thrown at private school for kids to get better education when we're already throwing the most money in the world on it right now? Like, that's kind of asinine to me.
Even if it's not rhetorical, but part of the answer is that if you go to private school, then it means that at least somebody in that equation, the parents or the kids, they want to be there, or that they've got some incentive to be there. When it comes to public school, it could literally just be the place you have to send your kids to, otherwise you go to jail, right? Because it's basically state mandated. So one of them is forced, and it could just be like a passive daycare situation. In a private school, somebody in your family has an incentive for you to actually pay attention and make use of that, because they've made like a monetary obligation in order for you to even be there. So it's a little bit night and day. And just to tack on to I loved Scantrons, and part of the reason I think that I have this thought about like AI replacing teachers is teachers could kind of be boiled down to three things they were useful for to me. One is they could answer a question that I had where the answer wasn't in the book, and there was no other option for me to do that. You know, go to the library and hope you pick the right book. So asking a question directly to a human being, that was essential. The next one would be if I got something wrong, they could actually be like, oh, I see that you did that. You carried the one and you weren't supposed to do that. Having that direct feedback on why I got it wrong, that was helpful. And then finally having some sort of objective third party, as much as they didn't always feel objective, to grade and do the assessment. All three of those things can be solved. In my limited view, all three of those things can be solved by AI, no problem. The only reason that I even spent money to go to college was because I had questions that I couldn't find a tutorial or a book or a Wikipedia article on that answered it. And I was like, I got to just go and hire a professional teacher and go to school so I can ask them these like highly niche specific things that I wanted to know. If I had an LLM, I might not have had to go to school to do that.
What year did you graduate high school?
2001.
Okay, I was 06. So like they just shoved it down our throats. You have to go to college. You have to go to college. And it's just wild. Like not everyone truly needs to go to college. And they made it just this thing where it was just an expectation. And then you have graduation parties. Where are you going to college? Oh, so-and-so's going there. And it was just, it's the wrong way that our society has really gone overall and everything. Because when we come out of high school, not everyone's at the same level with everything at all either. And we shouldn't have to have that expectation of being able to go there. And lastly, Walmart greeters.
Well, the point there though is that a Walmart greeter is,
dude, my Walmart greeters fucking sit in wheelchairs and they're just fucking retards. I'm sorry, Spin, but they're fucking retards. And it's
some
just,
of them have just been aged out of any other viable career field, and they just want to like have social interactions with people. I get, in my experience, maybe in the town that I grew up in, but it was like the grandma that had been a teacher for her entire life, and now she doesn't want to be a teacher anymore, but she's also bored. She just wants to like smile, and like that Walmart greeter could probably be getting paid as much or more doing the same thing, making kids feel good about themselves in just a different environment. So I mean, I know it's not the perfect analogy, but yeah, Walmart.
I know.
Go ahead.
I know what you're saying, but like that's it was a funny analogy with it. And I mean, I'm pretty sure the last time I went to a Walmart
greeters in fucking wheelchairs, prick.
All right.
Last time I walked into a Walmart, the guy was drooling, just sitting there. Well, I'm like, hi, I'll do your job for you. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here walking in right now. This is awkward.
Can I have your receipt? Can I have your receipt?
Thank you so much for the win.
Thank
And last but certainly not least, LLM Degrader. If you'd like to ask your question or provide a comment.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sarah. Paranoid. I have a long question for MC Toon, and then kind of just a quick one for Paranoid American. So for MC Toon, it sounded like you are for, and I'm a software engineer. I build with AI, you guys. It sounds like you are for some sort of AI implemented in the education system. I thought I heard you mention that earlier, and I want to
Yep.
Yep. So just a second. With that, I think I don't quite understand how such a solution would not simply converge into a system like the one that Paranoid has suggested here. And if it did converge into that, would you be okay with that? Let me kind of explain how that happened. So, like with the current context, we see all sorts of jobs or tasks being automated. Three of us have seen this for engineering. AI is being integrated everywhere. And in this case in particular, we see in the education system, we see two parties who are very incentivized to use AI. They're the teachers who are burdened with their workloads and would likely look for any sort of relief they would offload to AI, and students needing to assimilate to this AI native world are really going to use AI, or maybe I don't know. If we imagine that they both do use AI, then Paranoid system might just be some sort of like formalization of this end state. I don't understand how, if we implement even a tiny solution, like where we, if I something like what I think you might have done, like integrate a tutor, or we integrate a small application into the education system, then teachers would be more incentivized to rely on more and more, and they would be trying to, I don't know, deal with their burdensome public education. Maybe they have 20 kids, they're all rowdy, and they want to focus on that. And they just lean more and more, oh, it's easy, the LM teaching intuitions to the children. I'm going to have to do that. Going to the point where they just offload essentially their entire workload to this system, and they no longer need to do the teaching portion. If we get to that point, then what is between this system and where the system has gotten to and Paranoid's suggestion? Sorry, were folks able to hear me?
It sounds like your mic's kind of just tapping slightly in and out. I'm still picking up what you're putting down, but that we're kind of like having to fill the gaps mentally. Just so you know.
I think I understood fully what he was asking.
Yeah, it was still context clues there.
Basically.
We got it.
Okay, one system would converge into the other. So what do you think about that turn of events? Do you think that this would happen? If so, why or why not? And would you be okay with it?
Could it happen? I see that it could. I see that teachers could just take the easy route. Yeah. And Yeah, I wouldn't want to see that happen. And like I said to whoever asked earlier, I'm not going to have an absolute position on this. If there was an actual system that tried this and they had actual results where there was no teacher in the room anymore and it was just the AI, and then we could look and evaluate the results and see if the hypothesis put forward by Paranoid here was confirmed or not. Then, well, we could at least have a data point. We don't even have that data point yet. But would the teachers tend toward that? I suppose they can. And that goes to the just like all the other questions. How do you stop the teacher from teaching the thing that they're not supposed to do, and how do you deal with this, and how do you, right? If the teachers do the wrong things, that's a management problem. And we have people that are managers of teachers, the school administrators. That's their job, is to manage the teachers. So you go back to them and you say, make sure you're managing your teachers. And the fact that there are some teachers that are bad teachers and haven't been managed well doesn't mean that that you get rid of the whole system, or you swap out for some other completely untested hypothesis. No, you fix the problem.
Mm-hmm. That does make sense. Yep. And then just a small one for Paranoid. I liked some of the technical stuff you got into, even when we were getting to implementation and sort of how the system might work. You brought up a term, and I was just curious what that term means. You mentioned RAG model. What is a RAG model?
So RAG, as I understand, it's not necessarily a model. It's a technique that models can leverage. So I'll give you the non-technical explanation for this, which might be a little bit oversimplified. But a RAG would be, and you can do this now on some AI systems, where you've got the chatbot, you've got the LLM, but then you also have files you can upload. I can upload a PDF of a book that I wanted to be an expert in, or I can upload 20 different PDFs. RAG would essentially mean that instead of the LLM having to go back on all the things that it's ever been trained in to get your answer, it'll look at the PDF you just uploaded and derive the answer from that as its knowledge base. So it's sort of a way to augment what the LLM might know in general and give it like hyper specialized specific information. The RAG, it stands for retrieval augmented, blanking on the G, generation, retrieval augmented generation. So again, it's just a way of saying like, oh, well, I want to talk to my AI about this particular topic, but that topic is brand new and clearly like this generalized model doesn't know about it. So here's the exact information that you want. And then there's other like hyper specialized versions of RAG and alternatives where you've got like vector databases and things that can basically create like mathematical links between certain topics. But RAG is just a really easy way to augment something. So a teacher could be like, I want to teach mice and men. Hey, LLM, here is the version of mice and men. Here's the teacher guide to mice and men. And anytime I ask you about anything related to mice and men, you treat this PDF as your source of truth. That's an oversimplified version of RAG, I think.
Yeah, and they might not have the full document or something. Okay, yeah, so it's not a model, but it's like this stuff around it that grounds it. Okay, cool.
It's if you're familiar with doing any sort of like diffusion models, it would be similar to like an embedding or a LoRa, a low rank adapter, where basically like it doesn't know what Mr. Bean looks like, but I can augment my image model. Here's what Mr. Bean looks like. So whenever I ask you to make a picture of Mr. Bean, like use this augmented model. It's very similar to that.
Yep. Yeah, you might use embedding. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Yeah, thank you both.
Perfect. Thank you so much. As a kind reminder, we are officially moving over to the Gauntlet. This is open floor, open mic, still meant to be respectful. Let's not get too crazy, but it's a little more fun and enjoyable. And of course, it goes downhill towards the end of the night. If you are watching over on the Raging Tomato on any of those other platforms, those ends will be shut down and you will only be able to watch over on the Gauntlet debate in terms of if you are on my stuff, not anybody else's. So if you're watching the Raging Tomato on YouTube, Kick, X, Pilled, Kick, whatever, I'm going to end all of those, and you have to come continue watching over at the Gauntlet. That is at the Gauntlet Debate on YouTube. Head over there now. We'll see you on the flip side.